What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Vintage and Stuff with your host, Drew Heifetz. I got a very interesting episode for you today with Amy of the Velvet Underground, aka the Velvet Underdog on Instagram. Okay, she's a good friend of mine. She was in my vintage mastermind group during the pandemic, and we stayed connected. She's just down the road from me in Whistler. She's coming up to her 1 year anniversary of her store in Whistler and crushing it. She's been able to create a very sustainable business model and a happy team and a great company culture and a massive following in Whistler. And she's doing great in all aspects, okay? But I must warn you, this episode is a lot more about the stuff than the vintage. It is called Vintage and Stuff, so you've been warned, okay? But it's an amazing episode. We get really deep into a lot of topics. We do talk about her career, how she got to where she is, how she's crushing it right now. But we do talk a lot about personal development, particularly management, dealing with teams of people, dealing with people in general. We talk about a P&L, a profit and loss statement, guys. Never talked about that on the show. And I will give you a warning when that section is coming, because if you want to skip ahead on the P&L talk, although I think it's super valuable, I don't want to lose you guys on this episode. We get back into other personal development discussions. And, you know, this episode, if you are running a business of any kind, if you are dealing with any kind of people in your business, it's very, very helpful. This is going to be very helpful for you, for there's so many tips and tricks and things you can learn from this episode. So I'm excited about this. I think it's important to switch it up. We talk so much about vintage all the time that the stuff is also important, okay? I want to give a quick shout out to some of my newest Patreon members, people who support this show, people who see the value in what we're doing here, what I'm doing here, and with my guests, what they're doing here, giving you guys all of this amazing insight into the world of vintage and the vintage business. Again, if you want to support the show, you can go jump on the Patreon because it means a lot. This show does cost money to produce. It takes a lot of time. So I appreciate any help you can give me. Okay. Suzanne of Swan Song Vintage, thank you very much. Anna Jones, thank you very much. Remy Ragasa, thank you very much. William Scott, thank you very much. And Mocha Gutierrez, just a few of my latest Patreon members. If you want to support the show, again, jump on the Patreon. Thank you very much. Super excited for this episode with Amy. We had a great chat. We did have some audio trouble, but I sent it to Jesse to fix it up. That's my brother, Jesse Heifetz. Big shout out. And thank you for fixing the audio on this episode. Again, you know, you guys know me. I just do stuff. So me and Amy actually recorded this episode in person in my warehouse. Had to figure out how to do that again. It's been like 2 or 3 years since I did that. Had a few new gadgets that I was trying out. And guess what? Lo and behold, they failed. So I had to get Jesse to adjust the audio. But I think it came out great in the end. And I subscribe to the 80-20 rule, okay? It's not perfect. It's never perfect. This podcast is not perfect. But guess what? I get it out to you guys. I get it out every week. And the knowledge is there. The learning is there. And you guys still tune in. So again, I appreciate you. And enough about that. Here's the episode. Let's go. Okay, Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm super stoked. This is the first episode we've done live in probably 3 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is fun.
So nervous. How nervous are you? Level of 1 to 10.
I would say like maybe 2. I haven't really thought about it because you only asked me like a day or 2 ago. So I was just like, oh yeah, sure. And I've been moving house, so I've got a lot on right now. But
Less time to worry about it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sometimes people hit me and they're like, I was so nervous, but it was so chill. I'm always like, there's nothing to be nervous about. This is
Yeah, and we talk a lot as well. And like, if we're talking about business and stuff, I feel like it's just like another normal conversation. We're just recording it.
that is how it goes. Okay, so like you said, we do talk a lot.
Yeah,
Consider you a good friend.
yeah. Thanks.
You've done amazing things. It's pretty awesome to see. I'm very proud of you,
Thank
I
you.
would say.
Yeah,
You've now opened up a store in the village, which is seeming to
Yep.
be very successful,
Yeah.
thriving.
yeah,
You've cultivated a really amazing team there,
yeah,
a really
Yep.
cool company culture. You're always driving for more personal growth, it seems like.
yeah.
Yeah, you just are a rad person,
Thanks.
positive person to be around.
Yeah, I try to be.
So let's kick it in. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us how your journey into vintage began, because I know you, I guess, a little bit from the beginning, kind of just because you were buying from the store, the rag machine at that point.
hmm
But like, yeah, bring it back to the beginning and how the whole journey in vintage started.
So I started, I guess, making hoodies. I was like just chasing winters. So I was super into snowboarding, making like tool, like back in the day when those super, super long hoodies were in.
Oh,
Um,
salty era.
Yeah. So I was making those. And then I was using like upcycled, like I was thrifting and whatever just for my own personal stuff. And then using like thrifted clothes to like make pockets and decals and stuff like that. And so I was just doing that out of my big share house in Whistler and selling them to all my housemates, and then having like clothes and wine parties with friends, selling them at like to drunk people and stuff at house parties. And that was really fun. It was going well. And so then eventually I found a commercial space and decided to do it like more like legitimately, I guess. And then like as it happens, like styles change, and like when I started actually charging what they were worth, because I had overheads and that, I wasn't really selling as many of them, and not enough to sustain a business, that's for sure. And it's just like so much labor and like actually manufacturing clothes.
You were making these hoodies from scratch.
Yeah. So I like, when I moved to this commercial space, I bought a shitload of fabric, like spent $20,000 on fabric, bought like all these machines, like, because I was getting everything professionally. I was like, hey, we need to get it professionally cut. It's just kind of ridiculous. I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, when it didn't really sell as well as I thought, I kind of naturally just transitioned into like thrifting and selling like more vintage on the side. And that's kind of where the trend was going anyway. Like everybody just wanted used clothes, cheaper clothes. And so like we just started doing that out of my little like sewing studio. And then the warehouse below us became available like 6 months after I got that first sewing studio lease. And I was like, one of my friends was kind of helping me with it. She was like, what, we should open a cafe as well. So I was like, yeah, let's open a cafe too. So we started a vegan cafe and the vintage. That was in 2018, and then it just kind of grew from there.
Something I know about you is you bite off a lot.
Yeah,
Please dive in head first. Like
yeah,
20 grand in fabric to go make some tall hoodies
yeah,
straight off the bat is a pretty deep dive.
yeah.
And then the cafe is a pretty deep dive, because that must have cost a ton of money to open.
So deep. Like I was like, I have a background. I used to be a chef in, like, I used to work in fine dining for like 10 years. So I was like, that'll be the easy part. Like that's chill. I know how to do that. But it was like, we had to put a full cafe in there and everything, like, so the kitchen and everything, there was none of that in there. So we had to get like the licenses and like all the health inspection stuff. Like that shit's so hard to do. But I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, and like when you don't know, you don't know. So you just like sign some papers, sign the leases, get the loans, and then all of a sudden you're in too deep to back out. And so once you're in, you just do it. But yeah, it was pretty fucked. It was really hard.
So yeah, you're saying like you might not have done it if you've known how hard it was in this
No way.
scenario. And
In
and then those are huge learning experiences, and
yeah.
sometimes you just got to go in.
Yeah, in the beginning, like in those first like 6 months, and like I thought it was just gonna, you open it, build it, and they will come. That's what I thought that was how it works, but it's just not true. So I like built it, spent like all my life savings, plus I got a loan. I think we put about, well, I say we, I mean, I put about maybe 80 to 100 grand into that first like store fit out and like all the things that you need to buy and whatever. And then I just like wasn't busy, and I was like, oh shit. So in the first 6 months, like I would cry like every single day in front of customers, everything. Like my friends would be like, dude, you need to stop crying in front of customers. And I'm like, I can't, because people come in and they're like, how's business? And you're just like, that question just is like, I just am like, I can't. It's fucked actually. It's really bad. But those were the early days. It's like, all fun and games now.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just think of you and Chris both crying to customers beside each other. Stores and Function Junction.
Was he crying?
Well, yeah, Chris would always be like,
maybe in a different way.
People support me out in Function Junction. And he's like, they support you, but you're so far from
Yeah,
them.
it's so hard.
So for people that don't know Whistler, they were both in the neighborhood called Function Junction, which is like the industrial part of Whistler, which is small, but it's also 10 minutes out of town.
Yeah.
Which seems like close, but not in Whistler.
Not in Whistler. Yeah, like not when most of your clientele have to catch the bus.
And you also have a tourist clientele which want to have the resort experience.
Yeah.
Which typically don't go to the
they don't go out
zone. They're
no.
They're staying in this nice manicured.
Yeah, they're staying in Disneyland.
Exactly. So I could imagine business was hard.
Yeah, it was tough.
And I don't know if I've ever even said this I probably have at the show, but I had a store in Whistler.
Yeah.
2007 to 2010. Were you there at all during that period?
No, I think I was in Big White in that season.
Okay. So yeah, we closed after the Olympics. But even in the village wasn't even that easy because it was still so seasonal. And my era was like when vintage was not super well known. Everybody didn't get it yet. Tourists they were buying it, but not as much as I think they would be buying and shopping in your store now.
Yeah, no.
So now you're in the village. You're crushing it. You took another deep dive headfirst into a major lease.
Yeah.
But like right in the good part of town.
Yeah.
So tell us the transition there and like, yeah, how that was for you.
Yeah. So I guess like after COVID, we had to shut the cafe, and we kind of like, we didn't shut it completely. We reined it back to just doing like coffees and like samosas. And then I went like the Christmas of like, I think it was 2021. I went away to Australia. While I was away, we had a huge flood. Our coffee machine blew up. And like, if you know, coffee machines like are worth like $10,000 minimum for like a shit one. And so that was just like, got back and we were super quiet as well. We had a really shitty December because like there was so much snow. So nobody could get to functions. We had like the worst month ever. And then it was just like, I don't know, those two things were like the nail in the coffin. It was like, fuck it, we've got to shut, we've got to move. Like this is just not working. So we shut the doors, decided to do like online and markets, which was like not even putting a dent in our like actual overheads because we still had the rent and everything, loan repayments and stuff. And then we just started looking for a place in the village, and like we were looking and there was places that were like $38,000 a month in rent. And in my mind, I was just like, well, we have to move. Like it's the only option. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is the only option, $38,000. We're going to have to get an investor. So I was starting to go down the route of like, okay, we're gonna get a $2 million investor. I was doing pitch competitions, like getting all my pitch deck ready, trying to think of how I can like make a business like mine with the track record that it had look like a good investment, which is really hard because we didn't have a good track record. It looked like shit on paper, especially. And then to try and pitch that to an investor that would be like, yeah, okay, this is going to be like a really scalable model as well. It's just like, I don't know. I was pretty deluded, I think, but
you sent it to me. I read it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I did.
I was when I read this pitch deck, I was like blown away. I'm like, holy shit, she's ambitious.
That's bullshit.
You're like, going into a crazy rent, you're like, we're gonna make $1 million a month. Like the projections, and then the scale of your cafe was like a full restaurant vibe. You almost wanted it with this vintage store.
Yeah, we're serving alcohol.
So yeah, it was very ambitious, and I was like, I don't know if this is the go.
Luckily, we didn't have to though, because we found this place that used to be a real estate agent office. So I'd looked at it before, but I was like, I don't know, it's like office vibes, upstairs and downstairs. But it's pretty much like the last place in Whistler that was kind of like not ridiculous rent, because it's just owned by like a normal guy, not like some massive corporation from overseas. Still crazy rent, but like it's not $38,000. So yeah, we got that, and we got a really great deal. We had a trial lease, so we were just paying like so cheap for the first 3 months, I think 6 months. And then it was dead season. I think we had a pretty decent summer, and then they were like, okay, it's time to go to like the big rent now. And so I was like, fuck, I don't know if this is going to work. Like looking at our numbers and that, I'm like, I don't know if we can afford this, but it was like that or close, and that's not an option. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So signed the lease, and then we had the shittest dead season ever, lost about $30,000, and it was fucked. And I was like, at the start of December, like I remember us talking to you, I was like, this isn't good, eh? Like we're going down.
Man.
And you're like, don't worry about it. It's not even the end of December yet. And I was like, I don't know. Like we have to be proactive. This isn't going good. And then just the last 2 weeks of December were fucking insane. Like we just made so much money and everything was okay. And then we had a good January, and now things are kind of just leveling out. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster, that's for sure.
So what's the lesson there in that fall period when you were tripping?
I think trust that everything's going to be okay. And like if it's not, then there's a lesson to be learned in that, but like just do everything you can. I think still be proactive. I think it wasn't like the worst idea to just, start to think about what's like an exit plan, I guess, because you don't want to just be like, oh shit, I got to close my doors, but just keep being super, I guess, what you can do in that moment. Like be like, okay, what can we do right now? How can we like
what you can't control?
Yeah, like how can we cut expenses, do more marketing, get product that you need that's gonna sell, and just do whatever you can. And I don't know, I'm kind of also just like keep throwing everything at it until it's no more as well. So we just kept doing whatever we could. It's like,
I love it.
Yeah.
I had a talk with the team the other day, and it was about being all in, because I'm like, there's like, a lot of crazy things happen in business. People get discouraged, there's ups and downs all the time. But if you're going to be in, you might as well just be all 100%. Like there's no point. And then if you don't want to be here, that's cool. Call it a day.
Yeah.
Quit your job or close the business. But if you're in, just be in.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's never over until you give up. You can't call it a failure until you've said it's over.
Yeah, 100%. My dad always would say, if you're going to do something, do it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
So this is a good segue, because we'll go back into that topic more. But, at that time when you called me, you were kind of like tripping. The numbers looked crazy. Dead season sucked.
Yeah, I was fucked.
Dead season was rough. So obviously, for people that don't know, dead season in a ski town is like your shoulder season, worse in the fall. Used to be really bad spring and fall, but now because of biking season, spring is not so bad anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere near as bad.
Yeah, so fall is the worst. You're just waiting for tourists to show up from like September to Christmas, really, and then just crazy all winter.
Yeah,
so it's so crazy because for other people who are listening, probably not a lot of them have stores in ski towns, if any. The seasons are opposite. Like in the city, I'm looking at like a normal fashion season, which is busy in the fall, busy in the spring, when people are doing change of season wardrobe.
Yeah, you guys did really well in November, hey?
Yeah.
I know, we were shit. Yeah.
So it's like flip seasons in a ski town, which is cool. Or it's just different.
Yeah.
But let's talk about. So you obviously through this whole period, you've learned a ton about business. You're like relentless on personal growth. Um, and we kind of talked about P&L versus cash flow stuff at that point,
Yeah.
which is super interesting and important to understand.
Yeah.
So what's your take on it?
Yeah. Well, I think I learned that like very early on in the piece, like when we didn't have like back in function and we didn't have a very robust accounting system at all. And so we were just spending blind, constantly not knowing what the fuck was going on. And back then I did a Tony Robbins like business mastery thing. And they were talking about, and like I got a mentor because I knew my books were just like in the shit. So I got a mentor from Women's Enterprise, and she walked through everything, and she kind of showed me this like to do kind of track all of your expenses and all of your sales in this like in a spreadsheet. And so then at the end of at the bottom line of the spreadsheet, you can see how much money is like in your bank account constantly. So it's just like money in, money out, because I don't know, accounting shit kind of, it's just confusing, especially when you've got like accounts payable and all this other random shit. That it's just, and then there's all this other stuff as well, like loan repayments and like credit card payments and owner's draw that doesn't come off. Like if your accountant gives you a P&L, they won't have that on the P&L, but that's technically came out of your bank account. So at the end on the P&L, they'll be like, oh, you made all this money. And you're like, no, I didn't. Like, I haven't got any money in my bank.
Yeah.
So then this spreadsheet, which I learned from, first of all, this mentor, and then at this business mastery thing, they're like, you need to have this spreadsheet, which is essentially just like you get to keep your finger on the pulse of your business, and you can see so clearly month by month all of your expenses, and you can just see the red flags, like, whoa, why is our phone bill up, or why is our rent like looking like this, or why are our wages like this? And because you can see them month by month. And then at the bottom of it, you can see how much cash you have, because there's no point it's saying, oh, look, you're so profitable, but you've got like negative money in the bank, because that's just like, that's how you're essentially running your business. So yeah, having a spreadsheet with like all the numbers just like literally in black and white there in front of you is so fucking important.
Yeah. So to break this down, like simplified, you're talking about a real cash flow statement, an actualized cash flow that shows you like what's happening in the company. Most companies don't even, like, probably 90% of people who listen to this show don't even know what we're talking about. P&L is a profit and loss statement, and a cash flow statement is based in cash. The difference is that, business owners need to keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening. How much money's in the bank? That's what you're describing with your statement. It's money in the company every month versus money out. Total picture of it, showing, like you said, any red flags, but being able to give you the actual number in the bank account.
Yeah.
The P&L will give you not the number in the bank account. And the difference on a P&L is that you're only calculating the expense of the goods you had sold that month.
Yeah.
Not the expense of the goods you purchased that month that are still sitting in your store, because they're considered an asset on a P&L. So,
which I think a lot of people can't even calculate that, because unless you have a really good like way of recording how much, like you're doing inventory all the time, then, and you have all your cost of goods recorded, which I think for a lot of people in vintage, they probably don't have, because it's a lot of the time by weight, and, it's very complicated. Then, they probably don't have a lot of like a very clear picture of the like percentage of like the profitability on each item and all that kind of stuff. So then even then,
yeah, but I think you're right. So most people are probably not even doing reports. They're just going like, okay, how much money's in the bank account, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they're like doing some cockamamie tax return based on like, some receipts in a drawer.
Yeah.
Right? Which I totally get, because I did that, and you probably did that at some point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like how everybody operates.
Yeah.
And then are you corporate? Do you have a corporate? Yeah. Okay. So, which again, that word is like stigmatized and demonized, but it's like just a better structure for how you run your business, because you can't,
Yeah.
otherwise you're a sole proprietor and then you're running everything as a person. It's more risk, especially in America, because the way
Yeah.
you structure it differently, but we won't get into that too much. But the reason I bring this up is because it's people need to understand that if they're out there buying a ton, like for you, for instance, we'll use your case because it's your podcast. You in the fall were buying a lot to ramp up for winter. Sales were slow in the fall, right? Because of the dead season, but yet you were stockpiling inventory that made you money in the winter.
Yeah.
So now a lot of your cash flow is going into product, but it looks like you are losing money, but yet some of those losses we figured out weren't actual losses. They were in inventory, right?
Yeah.
So when you're not able to even understand that or see that, you'll be like, shit, we lost 50 grand, but no, you didn't. You actually lost 20 grand and 30 grand is sitting in inventory that's going to make you money in the future.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense for everybody listening out there. It's complicated. It took years to fucking
It's so complicated.
get on board with. Yeah. So just to try to make it super simple, P&L shows your actual profits. This is what corporate, the whole corporate America, corporate world works on, is a P&L statement. Like so many companies show profit, but have zero cash, have no cash flow. They continually take on investments but they're showing profits. It's a fucked concept, really.
Yeah.
But then you can then your cash flow statement will actually show what's happening in your business, which is money in and actualized money out.
Yep.
It's a weird thing, and I'm getting more into the world of like how this works, because when you're going for big business money, they don't really care cash flow. They kind of do, but they're way more interested in
a lot of them are like losing money. Like a lot of the biggest companies in the world are like cash flow negative, right?
Yeah. I don't even think like Uber ever made a profit, and it's like worth all this money, and people keep dumping money into it, hoping one day it's going to make money.
Yeah, which is a weird concept because I haven't really wrapped my head around how all that works. But
yeah,
I think for like people listening, having a really clear understanding of your cash flow rather than just your P&L, because like if you just pull a P&L off QuickBooks or whatever, it's not going to give you a very clear picture. It's not a useful picture for you to be able to understand how to run the business like day to day.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't even really look at like a corporate P&L for my business unless I'm like wanting to know like something was weird, but I run
mine either.
Yeah. Run on a cash flow business, because unless you're taking on capital to grow, that's when it becomes important, because capital to grow is, you could spend 200 grand in 1 month, but you've built an asset, say like you're building a store. Right?
Yeah.
And you can't build a new store unless your business is super strong without some kind of investment outside of your normal cash flow day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So then you're taking on, and then you have to look at that investment into the growth of the company outside of your cash flow.
Yeah.
Which again is complicated.
Yeah.
But otherwise you just can't understand it.
No. Yeah, it's all very complicated. Having it in a spreadsheet, having it like as clear, and in like, I think a lot of people in business, like especially in like vintage, are like a lot of creatives, and yeah, you just need something that's like super easy to understand, especially when you're running a business. You're fucking busy. Like you don't have time to like look at the P&L and like try and decipher like what the fuck it actually means. Whereas just having it on a spreadsheet, just clear in front of you, you can just like look at it for 10 minutes and see what the fuck's going on. And if there's something that's like needs fixing, or like an expense or revenue, even like to track your revenue and stuff and see what's working and what's not. It's just like so important.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people will see they're like down in their bank account, and they'll just like start hustling to make more money. Right.
Yeah.
Which is like the natural fucking response. But I think what's more valuable, like you said, is to like take a break and like look at why. You have to know why. If you're always just like spinning wheels to like be like, I got to make more money because we're broke right now. Sure, it's a Band-Aid, but it's not a solution.
Yeah.
Why you're not profitable per se. You have to make the reports. You have to understand like the picture,
Yeah.
like you're saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of people especially when you first start a company or a business, like it's so easy just to get wrapped up in like running, like working in the business and not on the business. But if you don't take that time to work on the business, like look at all your reports, analyze like your revenue, your expenses, like all that shit, like you're just like setting yourself up for failure, really.
So explain that, working in the business versus on the business.
So like when you're working in the business, like picking and taking photos and selling to customers in the store, like you can't do anything else. Like you're not analyzing this, like, or any of the financials. You're not being able to like look at what's like, where should we be spending our marketing money, or like what's our marketing budget. You probably don't even have a budget, because like that shit takes so much time. And like I think that's a thing that has happened. Like I've been working a lot in the business like the past 4.5 years. It's only just recently where I've been able to like really get outside of the business, and that's partly because I've got such a great team right now. But like when you're doing all that shit, like there's so much to running a business that's not in the business doing the stuff. And I think people forget that, like especially in the beginning when I first started to not be working in the store, people are like, oh, is Amy having another day off? I'm like, no, like there's actually so much shit to do, and like just answering emails, and like it's just like, yeah.
Totally.
But it's so important.
I used to feel that too. I used to be like, shit, I'm taking a vacation. Is like everyone going to hate on me for doing that?
Yeah.
Which maybe they do, but again, it's like what you're saying. And if you're not in the store and you say I'm here at the warehouse, or you're like in your office doing work, they don't see that potentially. And then it's also, I think it's like a misconception, because I think they do understand to a level, but it's also how you run the business. If they know that you're there for them, right? It's like
totally, yeah.
Some bosses that are just, this is a good segue. We'll talk people management here. So,
yeah.
You know, how have you cultivated that team? Like you just said that you have a great team that allows you to like step away from being in the business to working on the business, which we defined. How have you been able to like cultivate that team who's there, who's ready to like work hard, ready to align with your mission? Maybe like talk about your company why as well.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot, having like a very clear why about like what you're doing, and being like very mission driven. And then verbalizing that to your staff constantly. Like when I was still in the business, I'm spending a lot of time with my like girls, my main two girls, Bronte and Megs. They're fucking crushing it. And
shout out Bronte and Megs.
Yeah, they're the best. And like I would just constantly be preaching to them about like what we're trying to do, where we're going. And I think that is like how you kind of get everybody to row in the same direction and subscribe to what you're going for, I guess, or like what your goals are. That's like super important, and give them like something to look forward to. Like if you're like trying to grow and like reach a goal and like create something, you have to kind of just like talk about it as if it's happening. It's going to happen, and that helps everybody get really excited about it, I think, and just feel really good about their job. It's not like you're just going to work, you know, just getting a paycheck and going home. Like it's so much more than that. And that is like what I think is like definitely made my team so much more dedicated, and also just hiring the right people. And that's been like a game changer. And over COVID, we had to let everybody go, and I just did everything by myself. And this is when we had the cafe too. So it was it was a lot of stuff that I was just like, I think I have like a highlight on our Instagram that's called My Week. And I watched it the other day and I was like, holy fuck. It's just like doing all the stuff in the cafe, picking, marketing, doing the website, like doing everything, serving customers, whatever. And then doing admin and all that stuff as well, making content. And then, but having that period where I was like, I'm ready to do everything myself, and I'm not going to hire anybody unless they're the right person. And then when I found Megs, like she was just doing some content for me, like just helping me out making reels. And she just had like such a great attitude. I was like, I need this girl to work for me. And that's kind of how I like got her. And then Bronte as well. She just like, she was sending me emails about working for me like months before she was even in Whistler, and just kept following up and following up. She's just so keen. And that's the kind of people that you want. And when we're like interviewing people, we kind of go for that sort of attitude. It's all about attitude. I don't really even give a fuck where they've worked before. If they don't have retail experience, like it doesn't really matter to me. It's honestly just about their attitude and, you know, where they're, what their goals are in their personal life. You can kind of tell a lot about somebody by asking them that kind of stuff.
So how do you weed them out? What do you ask? I want specifics.
So we firstly ask, what does sustainability mean to you? That's our biggest one, because sustainability and like living a more conscious lifestyle through the art of pre-love fashion, that's like our catchphase. That's like the backbone of what we do. So that's like our number one question.
Your catchphrase is living a more sustainable lifestyle through the art of secondhand?
Yeah, we inspire people to live a more conscious lifestyle through the art of pre-love fashion.
Nice.
Yeah. So first of all, we ask, what is sustainability? And like we've had people say like, what does sustainability mean? And it's like, okay, this is going to be a no, because like they're not going to ever be able to prescribe to our mission. Like,
okay, so let's go. What is sustainability?
For me, I think it's making less impact, making conscious decisions about everything. Like for me personally, it's not just about fashion. It's about living like less waste, buying local, like just thinking about like literally every single decision that you make and what the impact is on the environment, on the planet, on the people who make it. And I think there's just so many different layers of that. But like, that's why we had the vegan cafe as well, because I think your diet and what you put on your body are two of the biggest areas that every single person can make that choice every single day. That's going to make a huge impact. So that's why like we kind of were trying to do that, I guess, but the cafe didn't work out for now. But yeah, there's just like, honestly, there's so many decisions. Like, you know, not everybody has to be vegan or not everybody has to wear like secondhand clothes, but choosing not to use a coffee cup when you go, like a takeout coffee cup or whatever, when you go to the shop, or not to use a plastic bag. Like these are decisions that people are like, that's not going to make a difference. But it honestly does. Like if every single person made a conscious choice every single time they do something about like, is this sustainable? How badly do I need this? Like, is this piece of plastic going to be around for 200 years? Then it would make a huge fucking difference. But I think people get so overwhelmed with like the magnitude of the problem of like global warming and all this kind of stuff, that they're just like, oh, it's somebody else's problem. It's corporations, it's the government, they have to do something. But it's like, that's a shitty place to be in, like to feel so powerless that it's somebody else's problem. It's not. It's like we can all make a difference. Just literally every fucking day we have so many opportunities to make a better choice. So that's what sustainability is to me. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
I know. You can probably talk. She is a eco warrior. You are insanely passionate about this, and I know we could probably do a whole episode just on that topic.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. I'm super guilty of not doing as much as I should be doing, for sure. And I think probably a lot of people are. And like you said, it's that mentality that one person can't make a difference, but we can't. People can. Everybody can. You know, there's so many excuses I can say about like having kids and then this and that, and freaking the whole world is stacked against you in doing it. Like you go get takeout and there's waste. You go to the grocery store, there's shitload of waste. Like you said, get your coffee, there's waste. There's freaking waste everything you do now. So it's about making those decisions. You've inspired me to try to do better. And hopefully she inspired you guys to try to do better.
Hopefully.
Because little decisions make a big difference.
They really do. I think there's this quote that I absolutely love. And it's called it goes like, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And that is just like so fucking true for everything in life. As soon as you feel powerless, like you are powerless.
Yeah. That's perfect. And what, when you think about what does that mean? That means like when you are in a situation and you make an excuse, you become powerless in that moment.
Yeah, you become the victim.
You become a victim. Exactly. And the victim is powerless. The victim believes they can't change that situation
Yeah.
for their own good. In reality, there's very little situations in your life that you can't change.
Mm-hmm.
When you break it down, this goes back to like our perception of reality. Like we assume the world around us, we perceive the world around us differently than the next person. Like
Yeah.
I look at the world differently than you look at the world.
Yeah.
And when we believe we can't change our own reality, we become helpless.
Yeah.
We become a victim.
Definitely.
And nothing happens. It's just bad spiral.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a sweet tangent. I love it.
Yeah. I love talking about that stuff. So yeah, I'm glad we went there.
Let's go back
to hiring.
To just people management. Yeah, I guess we were talking about hiring. Hiring is fucking hard. And I think like you were right. Hiring the right people is super important. With some of I still manage Frankie, and we made some bad calls, and we're now being very, very thorough in who we are bringing on board, because it's like they have such an impact on the company. They have such an impact on company morale. Yeah, like
totally.
You have to work together. You need to surround yourself with people who look at the world with infinite possibility.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about attitude.
And attitude, yeah, exactly. It's it's a broad spectrum. It's like attitude can be like positive or negative. It's got to be the right attitude.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You got to pick the right attitude and take your time with it, because so this is kind of a segue too into like EOS, right?
Yeah.
So you have a coach, Renee.
Yep, she's amazing. Shout out to Renee.
Maybe we'll drop a link down below if you want to reach out.
Yeah.
And she is a EOS coach.
Yeah.
Okay, so EOS is the Entrepreneur's Operating System. You want to give like a quick explanation of what that is?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I would say like a running, like actionable business plan. And so essentially it's like a framework where you write down your goals, like 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. And then from the 1 year goal, you write down quarterly rocks. And it's essentially just like breaking down your goals into like working backwards from like your big vision and only doing the things that matter. So like everything has to work towards your rocks. Like, and then every single week you track.
Well, you got to even explain that. What's a rock?
Oh, it's like I guess it's a goal, a small goal. Yeah. Would you say it's a small goal?
Well, it's like actually a big goal. A small goal is like a to-do is a small goal.
Yeah.
A big goal is a rock. And then like your big company mission, they call a BHAG, which is your big, hairy, audacious goal. And the way like I was explaining the rocks was like, if you don't, we'll get back to your explanation, but just this rock thing so people understand the language. You say you need the rocks first before you make the to-dos. You put the rocks in a jar. If you fill a jar with sand, that we'll call the to-dos, you can't put the rocks in.
That's why they call it that, yeah.
If you put a rock in a jar, you can fill all the space with the to-dos, which is the sand.
Yeah.
So you have to create your rocks first, which are your bigger goals, which are things that, again, goes back to kind of like working on the business versus in the business. Your to-dos are like in the business, kind of, and your rocks are on the business. So yeah, that's the explanation of that. Go back to the...
Yeah, so essentially like you would write, I don't know, like maybe a revenue goal or like marketing goals, whatever. That might be for your quarterly rock. And then every single week you write down a list of to-dos that will essentially get you closer to those rocks. And then the idea is that those rocks will add up to your yearly goal, and your yearly goal is adding up to your 3-year goal, and so on. And then on top of that, you have to do a scorecard, a weekly meeting, which you track all of your like KPIs, like all of whatever is important to you in your business.
Yeah, KPI is data points that you're looking to track in the company.
Yeah. And so that way that you can clearly, like, it just keeps everything like super front of mind. So like whether it's like average transaction value, like revenue, followers on Instagram, I don't know, lead generation, depending on what like industry you're in, I guess. And yeah, it's just like really good because having that, like it was really hard to implement to start with because like taking the time to have a weekly meeting, and sometimes these meetings take 2 hours. I have them every week with my girls, Bronte and Meg. So like a managers meeting, I guess. And I will go over everything, like issues that we're facing. Like we talk about like what's going well, what's going bad in our personal lives and everything, and like and in the business. And it just gives you a chance to like, I guess, check the pulse on the business, converse with your team, get them up to speed. And like, it's just been such a game changer. If anybody wants to like read more about it, you can read, there's a book called Traction, which outlines it all. It's like a really great book. But yeah, it's honestly been the biggest game changer.
Yeah, I've been using it too.
Yeah.
So
it's all about discipline.
It is about discipline. It's basically a business structure system. A business structure system which allows you, like all the things you said, tracking, be in touch with the bigger picture goals, get your team aligned on a mission. It starts with you creating the mission and the big goal.
Yeah, why do you exist?
Yeah,
who
why
your
do we
customer is. Like it's like it really is like a business plan, but like an actual like business plan, like a traditional one. It's just a lot about who's your competitors and stuff. Like I don't know, they're just like
when
really
I think of business plan, I think of like
SWOT analysis, all this random shit.
It seems outdated to me because it's something that I remember like having to try to make when I started the business.
Yeah, when you get a loan and it's so hard.
Yeah, you're like bringing this like Microsoft Word printout to the bank of like all this crap that you just made up off like.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of bullshit anyway.
It's all bullshit. You just make it up. EOS to me is a very like actionable system that businesses run on.
And it's constantly moving and evolving.
Yeah.
So
it just gives you such a good framework. So you've been doing it. I've been doing it. I've found it super helpful for like keeping the team aligned, check-ins with the team. And just like for me too, because I'm not like traditionally like a super structured person, right?
That's why I think we need it so much because I'm the same.
Yeah.
If you need discipline and like structure in your business, like this will help you implement it. But like some of the biggest businesses in the world run off this framework. And I think all of the most successful businesses have something along these lines.
100%. They have to have a version, this system, to be able to manage such vast amounts of people and things happening. Like they
totally,
it has to be implemented to grow a business to a large scale.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
And even if you don't want it to a large scale, like if someone's just wanting to have a successful business and create more freedom by having a business, which is like why I think a lot of people try to have a business and then it actually ends up being the opposite. But like this will give you more freedom. So you put that as a goal and then it'll like enable you to run the company more efficiently so that you actually can have the life that you want.
Yeah. And that again, back to like working in the business, working on the business, people think like owning a business is not passive income unless you've like figured out how some magical way to like be in Mexico while your business is running back home.
Yeah. But especially a vintage business is just it's higher labor.
It's high touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be so involved with the clothes. Like even myself, like I'm still sorting freaking clothes often, right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of skill as well involved, like a lot of knowledge and skill that you build through experience. You can't just get anybody like, a virtual assistant to do it for you. You need people that have been trained.
And that's like the gift of vintage and the curse of vintage in one, because it's what gets us into it. Because we're like, we know the knowledge, we understand what's cool, we understand what people want. We can go find it. Which starts our journey, right? Which starts the love of it and also starts us making money.
Yeah.
But then in the end, you're like, shit, how do I take that, which is like this thing in my head, and make that scalable to a high level that I can eventually maybe sell or at least, bring to a bigger level. And that, like, for sure, I don't know if I've ever talked about it in that way, but it is like the gift and the curse of secondhand clothes and vintage.
Yeah.
And it's why like tons of people, there's big companies in used clothing now. There's huge companies, but a lot of them still aren't profitable. Like when you look at like the Real and all these companies, like I don't think any of these guys who are on these massive scales or Yurtle, the company that does the take back programs, and
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
they're like the ones that do like resale programs for like Patagonia and North Face.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Some of them are profitable. They're like this Uber thing where they're like,
Yeah.
well, we're going to be profitable one day, but like we're
Mm.
taking on millions of investment to try to make this thing work.
Yeah, that's the holy grail, trying to figure out how you can make this kind of model scalable and profitable. Yeah,
We're going to do it.
yeah, definitely.
I interrupt this episode to bring you a very special announcement. I am here to tell you about the Tri-State Vintage Pop-Up taking place at the Brooklyn Monarch, 23 Meadow Street, Brooklyn, New York. April 1st, okay? This is hands down the best vintage event in the Tri-State area. That is coming from them. I have never been, but I'm taking their word for it, okay? There will be 25 vendors selling all your favorite vintage commodities. And guess what? Admission is free for all human beings, okay? There will be $10 Jinko jeans. There will be a $1 wrap tee raffle and $500 cash prizes for I don't really know what. But it is April 1st, so be on high alert if any of this is actually true. What I can tell you is not a joke, is that there will be 25 vendors. There's going to be good music, and there's going to be no shortage of good vibes. The Tri-State Vintage Pop-Up at the Brooklyn Monarch, 23 Meadow Street, Brooklyn, April 1st from 12 to 5. If you're in the area or if you're close by, definitely go check this out.
Yeah. So from like the very beginning, I think I have always been the kind of person that's just like, I'm definitely not a natural, maybe a natural leader, but like not like a good like delegator and boss. I think I'm always like, fuck it, I'll do it myself, do everything myself. I'm not good at telling people what to do and how to do it. So when in the early days, like that's why I was doing everything myself. And I also just was like super stressed, like, you know, it was like really hard. I'd never had a business before. And like, then that kind of transfers to the way you speak to your people, and you're not giving them, I think, enough of the tools that they need to succeed at their job. And like when things weren't going well, it was actually such a blessing, because you are pretty much put up against a wall, and it's like, okay, how can I make this work? Like you need to figure out how can you ask for help and how can you get the help that's actually useful? Because like, I think with training people, a lot of the time it's like, fuck it, it is just sometimes easier, especially when it's small, just to do it yourself. But if you want to grow, like you have to figure out how you can get your people to do what you need them to do at a really high level, or you're fucked pretty much.
Yeah. And
So
back to like, essentially you need to be able to have somebody in your company that can do everything.
yeah,
Realistically, in the end, if you've done this right, there's nothing in your company that you have to be there to do.
yeah. And you need them to be able to take responsibility. And like, that was the really hard thing for me, like giving them the reins and trusting them to do whatever they need to do and to like learn. And then they can actually take some of the workload off you. So like, that was really hard, I think, because like, I'm just like always just do everything myself kind of mentality, like, which is really bad. I realized that was like the key ingredient to like survive, or not even surviving, thriving in business, was like people management and being a really good boss. So that was 100%, like in the early days, every single book I read, every podcast that I listened to was just all about people management, leadership, all that kind of stuff. And I just like was obsessed with it. Communication, all that sort of thing. And I just got, I think I'm almost there. Like my girls still like now we have like a very transparent kind of culture, and like I will give them feedback and they give me feedback. Like if I'm talking to them like not how I should, like a piece of shit or like being a bitch or whatever, they're like, you need to fucking take your chill pill. Like just have a look at what you're doing, and like we'll talk about it. And yeah, it's fine. But like sometimes, especially when you're in business, you can get really stressed. You get wrapped up in things and things come out. I think you definitely know this, where you're just like very blunt, you know, and your delivery is not the way it should be in order to like get the best out of your people. I'm so bad for that. I grew up working in kitchens as well, which is like, you know, you're lucky if you don't get sworn at or like thrown something your way, you know, like it's pretty hectic. So
The kitchen
it's like,
world is so intense, and it's so like high passion, I would say. Like people get so fucking into it.
oh yeah.
Very like intense work, which is great for certain types of personalities, but not everybody can operate on like that kind of like intensity.
Yeah. And my dad was a pretty big hard ass. We grew up on a farm. So like I was just like had, you know, very little people skills, I would say, in terms of management. So then read lots of books on all the things, got better at it. Now we have like very open dialogue, open communication with myself. We have procedures on like how to handle disputes, like who goes to who, like if you have an issue, and like how we handle it. All that shit is like systemized and it's written down, and we have like a way that we deal with it all. And it's been like a game changer, to be honest.
Fucked.
Committed to put mine over here.
You're pretty fucking audio better work. Okay, well, we're going on one track. Now, here. Yeah, this is motherfucker. We'll be good.
President, the money get Microsoft, Amazon. I've got these ones.
Well, no, I think this one, you have the exact same ones.
Yeah, they're looking exactly the same. I've not used them yet.
Okay, well, we'll see how this goes. Okay. It's throwing me off. Yeah, I want to continue this.
Communication.
Yes, communication, but I want to talk about, so yeah, we talked about management, and the typical manager is just like delegating tasks, thinking that they're doing a good job in management, but they're not enrolling their people in the why, or getting them excited about what they're doing, and they're missing the mark on that, or missing the mark on being effective.
Yeah.
Right. So talking about like some actionable things, you know, I'll talk about some things that I've learned too over the years. It's very important, because like so much of what I thought was management has been like completely like turned on its head.
Yeah.
Like so many things I end up doing, like I now do a complete opposite 180 of what I thought was the right thing to do back in the day. You know what I mean? It's so crazy because it works so fucking good. And I'm like, wow, I was doing that so backwards for so long. And examples of that would be like listening. Management,
Okay.
it's so much more about listening to your people than talking, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Communication in general is more about listening than talking, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
So really, what does that mean? Like in a business setting, it's like, well, everybody this is some Joe shit. We'll jump into Joe shit. But so Joe, we have a communication coach that I've been working with for like a couple years, and she just started with. Shout out Joe. He's a G. Anyway, so it's like,
Listening.
And this mic is throwing me off. Okay, about listening. Matt's gonna have to edit this all out. Yeah. Okay. So about listening, you want to like ask the right questions and let people vent. They want to be heard. They're going to be so much more happy in a business scenario if they feel valued. Value to anybody is like a basic human need.
Oh yeah.
You know, in a romantic relationship, you know, in a business, any relationship. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you make your staff feel valued in this world, right? Yeah. Back to listening. You have to listen to their concerns. Oh, let's talk about concerns. Yeah. When we communicate, all we're doing, like, unless we're just like having like a small talk banter, we're trying to address a need.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, if your staff needs to accomplish something and they're not, just as an example, you'd have a conversation. But instead of like being like, you got to do this, you got to do that, you didn't fucking do the dishes, like, or you didn't put the rack away, you didn't steam this properly, like, go get it done next time and don't fuck up again. Yeah. that's like, say, the old style, shit style of management.
Yeah.
The effective style of management would be like, what is not there for you?
Yeah.
Why, like, what do we need to like work on that will allow you to understand or complete this task?
Yeah.
And then they get to then say, what the fuck is their bullshit? What is their, why they didn't do it? What is their thing that's like blocking them from
100%.
accomplishing and being effective?
Yeah, I definitely did that a lot with like when I was starting to learn all this process. It's just like, and a lot of these like books that I read about like leadership and that, they're always like, it's always your fault. Like you're the like manager, the owner, whatever. Like you need to give your people the tools that they need in whatever way whatever framework that is, to do their job properly. So like if they say, this is just like a really stupid example, but like I'm like super onto the dusting in our store. It gets super dusty. So I'm like, if I'm constantly going in and like shit's not dusted and it's just looking like really bad, I'm like, okay, like you tell them, like remind them a few times or whatever. And then you're like, okay, like how can we make this like not happen? What do you need? Do you need like a better duster? This is like, I don't think this actually happened, but do you need a better duster? Do you need like a checklist so that you can remember? Do you need like, how can we make this easier for you essentially? And then they'll tell you exactly what's going on for them. And then you can like do it. And like, there's like so many examples. That's just like a really basic.
Yeah. And I think something to differentiate too is like when you say tools, right? Like we got to give our staff the tools. Half the time the tools are physical. I mean, actually probably less, probably like 20% the tools are physical. 80% of the time the tools are in your brain. Tools are like something in their own brain.
Support, like, is there not enough time for you? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's like, sometimes people just need to get something out.
Yeah.
So like, sometimes, you know, and this conversation could go very deep on this thing, which I love.
Yeah.
But it's like, so people have blockages in their lives of why they do certain things or why they don't do certain things, right? And that comes back to fear. It comes back to like childhood trauma. It comes back to
there's honestly so much.
It could be anything, right? We don't need to like assume why somebody has a certain thing, but we, as management and as people who have to accomplish something and deal with a lot of people, you got to understand psychology. It's it's all there is, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's a super important thing.
So, you know, letting them vent to you, letting them just spill it out. Like you got to be there for the staff and just let them like let it out, because just the act of that sometimes relieves the blockage of why things are not happening.
Yeah.
And when they get to hear themselves like say the things,
I've got a really good example of that actually.
go for it.
Yeah. So, and I think I've talked to you about this before, but and I think this is something that's like really relatable in like retail, especially. It's like when your staff are not like greeting customers, because like when you're not in the store all the time, you're like literally giving the reins to your staff to uphold your reputation and like the way you want your staff to talk to customers and things like that. And one time we heard that our like staff at the time were like ignoring customers, not greeting them, talking to friends, that kind of shit. And like, that's just like the shittest thing when you're an owner of a business and you hear that from someone and you're just like that sucks. Because you know, like your people they're good people. Like, why are they doing this? And they don't mean to be doing it as like a shit thing towards you. So like when this happened, I was like talking to my coach and I'm like, what do I do about this? And rather like in old me, or like, I think a traditional way to handle it would be like, okay, guys, like call a meeting and you're like, this has happened. Someone's come in and they've said that they got ignored or you didn't talk to them or like you were rude or whatever the fuck happened. But instead she was like, instead of doing it like this, you don't tell them that anything's happened. And you call a meeting and you say, okay, like we want to talk about, like we're going to do some training and like brainstorming around the kind of vibe and the kind of experience we want to create with our customers. And so then rather than tell them what's happened and tell them what they need to do, you say, what kind of vibe should we be creating in here? And then you ask them what we're trying to create and they'll give you a whole bunch of ideas. You know, we're trying to create a friendly atmosphere, an experience where people feel like, I don't know, they're being looked after or they're respected or whatever the hell it is. And then you're like, okay, what things could we do in order to create that experience? And they're like, well, greet the customer, pay them attention, help them find clothes, help style them, whatever. Okay, what things could we do that would move us further away from that? And that would be like, okay, be on our phone, ignore them, talk to our friends, whatever. And like I did tell my managers that a little bit about like the background so they could help guide the conversation as well. But like having it kind of where you're asking them and getting them to create the atmosphere or like figure out the answers for themselves means that they'll actually do it because it's their idea, you know?
Yeah. It's more valuable to have somebody invested in their own idea than you're telling them the idea they need to be invested in.
I hope my staff aren't listening to this. They'll be like, now I'm on to you.
But yeah, I've talked about this before too, but it's true and it works. And it's also, it shows them that you value their opinion. And sometimes it is their idea. And sometimes you're coming out with things that in those type of meetings that you didn't even think of. Right.
Yeah, totally.
So like it becomes a collaborative idea.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's awesome. Yeah. Great example of that. You know, another thing that is super important in this to touch on about like listen, right?
Yeah.
Back to listen. So what you're saying is like, yeah, you have a meeting, you listen to your staff's concerns and like their ideas about something, and then you guys make a plan together to act on everyone's ideas, collaborative effort, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you're like dealing with a situation and you're listening actively to someone in your staff venting, they might be venting about you, right? And like that's, most managers will never create a space that allows their staff that, right?
Yeah, no.
Because what'll happen is they'll react.
Yeah.
Like, what you shit talking me, man? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Fuck you. You said this, I said that, fucking blah, blah, blah. And you get into a big argument.
Yeah.
The key to listening is to not react.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest thing.
The hardest fucking thing. So I just wanted to get into this because I feel like giving you advice about listening and then not talking about how you have to listen is fucked, because if you end up reacting, then you've killed it.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You've closed space. You've closed possibility for like a better future.
Yeah.
Right? And that's always what we're doing in conversation and thought, but thought manifests into conversation from certain theories.
Yeah.
And when you're having a conversation or you're having thoughts, it's like you're either creating possibilities for the future or you're closing possibilities for the future.
Yeah, I love that.
So when you're reacting to somebody's concerns, just for example, someone could be like, well, I don't like the way you manage me. I don't like the way that I have too much work to do. You know, I don't like this or I don't like that, or you're being a dick. You know, that could be someone's vent to you as a manager. And the old shit way would be like, well, fuck you, you're fired, or don't talk to me like that, I'm your boss.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like all these shitty things that don't really create any good future. Yeah. They just create probably more disconnect between you and that person.
Mm-hmm.
When now what I do is I just say like, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I hear you. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe you'd be like, oh, I didn't know you were feeling that way about me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like be very accepting of the criticism and like diplomatic and not reactive.
Yeah, a great book to read is about that is called Nonviolent Communication, and it's all about like listening, like active listening. So when someone's like, when you said that, you made me feel like that, and I'm like, and then you kind of repeat it back to them, and you're like, okay, what I got from that is when I said this made you feel like that. Did I get that? And then I'm not that good at it yet. I'm still practicing, I guess, this like system or whatever you call it. But yeah, it's just all about like how to communicate and how to like make the other person feel heard and it talks about like a lot when you're like telling the way you feel as well, like rather than being like, you did this, which is like saying that, what is that word where you're like accusing somebody of doing something? You like, when you did this, you made me feel like XYZ. And that's like, somebody can't argue with the way that you feel. Whereas if you're like,
Yeah, but then the difference would be like, when you said this, I felt this, right? And like that, a lot of people talk about the I feel or you made me, like,
well, the story.
you got to bring it back to you because you, like, nobody can make you feel anything, right? That's something that's like kind of deep psychology. Your feeling is a reaction to someone doing something. They didn't make you do shit. You did it.
Exactly.
You felt the way.
Yeah.
So that, you know, when you communicate, you have to be clear about that. It's like kind of on a whole nother.
Yeah, this is a whole nother tangent.
whole
Just go
nother
read
round.
that book. That's a good start. Nonviolent communication.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're right. Like you got to, because what you're doing. So in that style of communication, if you're being open, if you're communicating gently, and you're just listening and you're just understanding.
Yeah.
And maybe this, it goes back to, again, like doing the opposite of what you think you should be doing, because what our like human nature and intuition tells us to do is the shitty management thing.
Yeah.
You go like, well, fuck you.
Yeah,
You know, like
defensive.
get defensive.
Yeah.
But in reality, you need to be understanding. You need to be like, just listening and allowing them to do what and say what they got to say. And when you do that, instead of creating more disconnect with your employees, you create like a complete open world of communication where they now feel valued.
Yeah.
They feel like you give a shit about what they're talking about, and they're probably going to go crush it for you.
Yeah, totally.
It's that simple. It's not fucking complicated when you like really break it down.
Yeah, we do like things, and like, I guess, kind of like performance reviews of everybody, and I ask them to give me performance reviews, and like often a big thing that comes up all the time, the thing that they say that they like about the job is that they are heard and like their opinions matter. Like I always say to them that we're co-creating the job that we want to have, essentially. So like when they say, hey, like this isn't selling, or I don't think this should be here, or I don't like the way we don't have enough staff on here, or whatever it is, like a multitude of things that they want to change. And I'm like, okay, let's find a way to change that. When they feel like I'm listening to them and then taking action on it and actually doing the things that they ask, it just is like so much. It just is, it's a game changer.
Yeah, totally. It's been a huge game changer for me. So yeah, listening, very important, very important. What else have you learned in the management world? What other things have like been big epiphanies or big game changers as far as people management?
Giving your people responsibility is like a huge one. I think like we have a mentality that fail forward. Always like I encourage people to fuck shit up. I'm like, I would rather you like use your initiative, take responsibility, and then it happens to be the wrong thing. Then just don't do it, because like we're not going anywhere if everybody's like too scared to act. So we try to create like a workplace or like a culture of safety where it's like, I'm not gonna freak out if you like, you know, for sure there's been times when this one time we almost accidentally took like $2,000 worth of buyback and we were really broke. But like that, even in that situation, like it's just like on the scale of how bad things can get, it's like a pretty high up there kind of mistake. But you just like, okay, no, this is actually great. Like, I'm so glad that this has happened, because now I know that we can document and we can have the conversation about like how many buybacks we can take, like what kind of buybacks we can take. And we have to have more of an open dialogue and more communication about like when we can afford certain things and when we can't. And so like all these like perceived like fuck ups, perceived failures are just opportunities to like learn where your business is weak, or like a weak spot in it, I guess. So like,
yeah, I agree. And I think when you talk about management assumes
yeah,
too often that everybody knows, like we assume that everyone knows more than they know, right? And then we blame maybe for things that was never taught, right? And we're like, well, that should have been obvious to you. Why didn't you know that was this? And you're like, well, you never told me, right?
Yeah.
So thorough training is super important. And that goes back to like the thing of like, we often don't train thoroughly because we think that I'll just do it for one thing. I'll just say, fuck, go back to doing it again. Or we assume that people have the knowledge that they don't, right? So like years ago, I learned that like you got to train like people know nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You train like people know nothing. Obviously, you want to hire smart people that can learn fast,
Yeah.
but you still got to train super thoroughly.
Oh, 100%.
And then create the systems where like that function of their job is like easy to understand.
Yeah.
And they have like you said, like check-ins or whatever they have to happen.
Yeah. Like we have checklists and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like I think there's so much like opportunity in like fuck ups essentially when your team like, and I always say to them like, there's literally nothing that you could do that I haven't already fucked up myself. And so like, and that's like, you learn so much in those things. So
an opportunity for learning, like you said, and then like ownership of it, right? So like that's a big thing too. Like, so the opportunity is in now we get to fix this thing, or now we get to create a system where this won't happen again because we didn't know we needed a system to make that work.
And as the boss, I always take ownership for almost every fuck up. Like,
which you should. But then also something I want to talk about is like back to EOS. Part of EOS is creating an organizational chart, right? This is something that a lot of companies who are listening to this probably have like one level. You know, you have the owner, and then like maybe a few staff. But there's going to be people listening to this that have like 3 or 4 levels, right?
Yeah.
You have your like direct management, then you have like their staff, and then you have maybe staff even under them, right? And getting good people, they have to understand that they have to take ownership of their department, right? If you have a manager, like you take ownership for the whole thing, right? Because it's yours. You're the owner of the company, but they have to take ownership of their department, right? And what's happening in their department. They're not willing to do that. And they're just, if your management is going like, Cindy fucked up, go give Cindy up. And you're like, no. First of all, you fucked up because Cindy didn't know how to do her job properly because of something that you did. Again, you're not going to like talk about it in that way, but it's like, well, why? What's missing there in the way you manage Cindy to get it done?
We're just getting
Cindy is a fictional character, by the way.
Yeah, never a real person. But yeah, we're just getting into that now, I guess, because like now we're starting to get like levels of management, and as I'm stepping out of the business more now, it would be like Bronte and Meg's responsibility. If like people in the store aren't doing their jobs, then they're essentially responsible for that.
Yeah,
that's pretty new for us.
Yeah, and then again, like, you know, this is now that you're like working with Joe and like, you know, you're onto all this stuff anyway, but you're going to be training Megs and Bronte the way Joe trains you, right? Yeah. Which is clutch too, because now you're going to be like, you know, my old management style, if say, say for Frankie, it's like Sarah and Amin, or it's Chris in the store, right?
Yeah.
You know, she used to come to me probably and go like, yeah, so-and-so's like fucking up. There's shit, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that's like completely not taking ownership for that person, right? In that department. Yeah. So then, you know, back in the day, I'd be like, what do? I didn't really know what to do. I'd like bring that person in the office and be like, what's going on? Like, why are you fucking up? Right. And like get to the bottom of it and like maybe some kind of reprimanding or whatever it is. But I don't do that anymore. Now it's like I coach them on how to have that talk. Yeah. Because it creates so many issues. If say Bronte was like telling you about a staff that was fucked up and you went to that staff and had the talk, what happens is it's like a tattletale scenario. That person loses respect for their direct boss, which is Bronte.
Really, yeah. And
you can't have that. You have to have them have respect that their direct boss has the balls, the whatever you want to call it, the management skills to handle that scenario, and then it creates more respect. Again, it's like that boss has to use the same skills of like listening, not reacting, and learning all the skills of actually managing.
Totally.
So,
it's leadership and communication is the most important things.
And that, you know, back to scaling, that's like the most important thing for scaling. That you can train your team to then be able to train another team, then to be able to train another team.
Yeah.
You can't get big without those key people
100%.
who can do what you do in management.
Yeah, 100%. That's why it comes back to hiring again. Like, you've got to hire the right people, give them the tools that they need to succeed. And that's just like, yeah, how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clear, like when you hire, there's people that are ambitious, and when you bring new concepts to people, like that might be, I've never done this. 2 things I look for in hiring is like, so not on the same tangent, but farmers, I'll hire a farmer in a heartbeat because they grow up knowing what actual hard work is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They wake up at like 4 a.m. and go milk the cows, right? Like they are ready to go because they understand what real hard work is. And that's like harder to find, I think, nowadays. I also look for like people who've played like a lot of team sports.
Yep.
Because they've had a coach, right? Coaching is management.
Yeah.
And you can look at it the same way. Like when you ever watch like those coaching shows and you see these like super motivational coaches like talking about how they led their team to winning the World Cup or whatever.
Yeah. I love that shit.
That's the same stuff that we're doing here. We're trying to lead this team to victory here, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same motivational skills, and you've got to look at it like that way. You're a coach. Like, why do these players give a shit about winning? Because the coach is like motivating them.
Yeah.
That like we're on a team, we're here together, we're working tightly together, like figuring out those synergies. So yeah, I look for people that have like been there, and then they're then hopefully coachable in this way.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
Leadership and communication and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, that's that's a good rant on that. Those are the things I look for in hiring. But I was going to say, I've never bringing concepts to people, like potentially in like an interview scenario, like because now that I'm like coaching rather than managing more, I find you're often bringing concepts to people that are like so forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you're talking to someone about like some psychology of management, and they're like, "What are you talking about, dude?" Like, it would probably be beneficial to know if someone's going to be open to new concepts or closed to new concepts.
Yeah.
In like an interview.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you do that yet, but I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, it's hard. I think a thing that I don't know who said it, but hire slowly, fire fast. And like obviously that's firing is really hard, but that's why you want to try and avoid having to do it.
Yeah, probably Gary Vee.
Yeah, probably. And there's nothing worse, which this sounds kind of fucked, but there's nothing worse than, especially in a business that you're trying to grow to be like really big, there's nothing worse than a good employee. Because a bad employee, you can fire them. That's easy. A really great employee, well, that's great. You want to keep them. But a good employee is just doing their job. They're just coming to work. They're getting this stuff done, but they're not excelling. And it doesn't give you can't fire them because they're just doing their job. But like, it's just, you're fucked, really.
I read something recently where it was like exactly that. Like, it's a dangerous place to be. And that's like for relationships too, and like all things, because like you could be in a relationship where you're like, it's okay, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's not fucking awesome. But it's not terrible, so I'm not going to leave it.
Yeah.
But you're stuck in the okay point.
Yeah.
That's like the danger zone of like mediocrity.
It's almost like, comfort zone is the worst place to be.
Totally.
Quick break from our scheduled programming so I can talk to you about my Wednesday live show I'm doing on the Easy app. EZZE. We'll put a link down below, and we'll put the name on the screen here for you guys, okay? Easy is a live streaming platform that is partnered with BidStitch. And I'm doing a weekly show now, and a bunch of other amazing dealers from the vintage world are also doing shows. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your app store. You're going to want to type in EZZE. You're going to want to download that app. You're going to want to get signed up for an account. You're going to want to go search Drew Heifetz on there, and you're going to want to follow me. And every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. PST, I'm going to be jumping on there, and I'm going to be selling stuff. I'm going to be shooting the shit with the guests in there. I might bring people on. I might give stuff away. It's going to be a really, really good time. I also said on my live last week that whoever spent the most money would get a shout out on the podcast, and I'm a man of my word. So Eddie Z, big shout out to you. You bought the AOP Eagle Liquid Blue. Much, much appreciated. Also, big shout out to Russ and Enrique, Fine and Dandy, and Brass Monkey. Go follow those guys. Matt, put their names on the screen, please. Fine and Dandy Throwback and Brass Monkey Vintage. Go follow those two guys. They've been supporters since day one. Much appreciated. So, and everybody else who's tuning into the live. So again, go get easy. Download the app. Be ready Wednesday, 6 p.m. And if you guys want to sell on there, go get yourself signed up. Let's go.
So let's, on this note, let's jump into your personal growth top 10 list. Like I said, like we talked about, Amy is very into personal growth, which I love.
Yeah.
I'm into it myself. I've gotten lots of recommendations from you over the years of books.
Yeah.
And we like talk about them, which we have which is cool. I'm not a lot of people I can like talk about that kind of stuff with, because
Yep.
not a lot of people read as much as you.
No.
So let's jump into your top 10. I think this is very valuable, so everyone should get their pens out.
Like we could write it in the show notes as well.
Totally. And then we'll just talk about these books.
So I guess the top book that I read, and it was the first business book that I ever read, is the E-Myth, and that is about making a turnkey business. So it's kind of uses like McDonald's as a principle of like just having a business that anybody can come into running it, because everything is systemized and everything is like procedures and documented and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the idea behind that. But it's not like a super long book, but all of these books are pretty dry as well. So
Yeah, you gotta want to grow. This isn't a story time. This isn't adventure out.
yeah, that one does talk. It's like talks in a bit of a story kind of way, so it's like a little bit more palatable, I guess. But other ones that I've read that are fucking awesome. Good to Great. That's kind of goes about like how do you get a business from being good to great.
Just kind of
Right.
the same topic
The
we
guy-
spoke about with people.
Yeah, and I read all of these on Audible. The guy that reads that one is really good.
And just touch on that one quickly. Skip Wilson, founder of Lululemon, also founder of West Beach.
Yeah.
Super successful visionary. People bash on him for certain things, but he based the whole philosophy of the company on that book, something called the Landmark Forum, which
Yeah.
you've heard of.
Yeah.
But also the principles of the Landmark Forum are what Joe works off of.
Yeah.
Similar. And it's one other thing. So basically, like, it's very important principles for growing a great business.
Which is great, yeah. The Art of Asking that's by Amanda Palmer. I can't remember what band she's from. She's like a musician or something, but she did like a Kickstarter and got like the record amount of money, and it's just all about like asking people for things and like building community in that. That was really awesome, and it's like a really interesting book to listen to as well. This is Marketing by Seth Godin. That is like fucking next level for marketing. It's just honestly the best book ever. Everybody should read it. Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Everything by Brene
My mom loves Brene Brown. She's always like
really
sending me
good.
these clips and shit.
Yeah, really good.
It's a podcast too, right?
Yeah, all about like lots about being vulnerable and leadership, and yeah, she's great. Nonviolent Communication, the one I said before. Built to Sell is like more. It's like very much about like the E-Myth kind of philosophy, where you're just trying to create a business that you're working on, not in, and like everything is about like, even if you don't want to sell the business, like you should always, if you want to run a successful and profitable business that gives you the freedom that you want, you have to be running it like you could sell it tomorrow. And if you aren't, then you don't have a business, you have a job.
Yeah, that's super important concept that we kind of touched on about like having someone in your business that can run every department, or that thing can run without you. Like if you can build a business where you don't need to be in it, then you can sell it. If you need to be in it, it's a lot harder to sell. So you got to be thinking about that the whole time.
Then you're an asset. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, like you said, you don't have to want to sell it, but to build it to sell is a sure way to make it successful.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And I guess depends on what your goal is. Do you want a job? And like half the time, a job that you have, which is essentially your business, is like it's like the least freedom you could ever have in a job. You can't take days off. You can't take holidays. Like if you are not there, everything stops. Your income stops, which is fucked. Like who wants to live like that?
Yeah.
You know,
And I can just hear people's thoughts out there listening to this going like, but I love my job. I love what I do. I love vintage, right?
yeah,
And those things are not mutually exclusive. You can still love your job, but yet build it to sell.
totally. Like
You
I
know?
love my job too. I love working. I'm a workaholic. But like
You
if you, yeah. But if you are working because you have to, then like what happens if you break your leg tomorrow? Like you're fucked. You can't get any money. You're like, your business is fucked. You're fucked. And it's just a bad time. So yeah, I think having always that mentality and like always thinking, can I sell this tomorrow? Is this valuable? Is like super important.
Yeah. It's just one more point on that, and we'll go to the next one. I talked about this on an episode not long ago, the 3 ways to get rich. People are going to argue with these 3 ways too, but go ahead. Is number 1 to sell a business?
I listened to this podcast.
Number 2 is to invest. And number 3 is to get inheritance. We all know most of us won't get inheritance. Yeah. You know, everyone should be investing ongoing, and then eventually you're going to want to sell your business. So think about it from that standpoint, because you most likely will not get rich from the day-to-day of your business.
Yeah, and like selling a business is almost like as kind of like the same thing as investing. If you think of your business as an investment, it's like and it's going to be, it has to be profitable, and then it is like, it's essentially you're investing right now your time as money.
It's a huge investment. It's the biggest investment you'll ever make. It costs you the most money. It costs you the most time. And it's, if you do it well, it'll pay off. If you don't do it well, it won't pay off. So it's a risky investment, but
it's a very risky investment.
Everybody has to do something for their career. So you're right, though. It's investment.
Yeah. Traction, that's the one that kind of goes through the EOS philosophy, the EOS framework. That's super, super helpful. Tribal leadership is all about like leadership, obviously, about how to like create tribes, which is essentially what you're trying to do, like create company culture and things like that. So it was really good. Who is about hiring, how to hire like A team, A players, I think is what they call it. But anyway, it's all about like firing fast, firing slowly, all that kind of stuff. Happy Money, that is a book about kind of like the Zen principles of money, and like how every month we have like this thing where, or every day, the girls, my team has to write like, thank you for the money that we get, even if we get fuck all, whatever. You have to be like, thank you, we love you. And I make them put all the money like the same way, and like we have to like not bless it, but like we always have to appreciate it and respect it. I'm like, this money is all like the wrong way around, and it looks like shit. Like we're not respecting the money, and like that kind of comes down to just like everything is energy. Money is energy. So like when you pay a bill, like you have to be like grateful for whatever the bill is provided or whatever, and just being like very in like sync with like the flow of the money is, I think, really important. And that book is really, really cool.
I'm gonna read that.
Yeah, it's great.
I have a lot of this list that I've never read. So
yeah, you got to start getting onto, like, not that I want to support Amazon or anything, because like obviously it's kind of against my principles, but Audible has just got me by the balls. Like I fucking love it, because I can smash out so many books. I'm reading books while I'm picking, while I'm running, while I'm in the car. Like
I used to crush, and then now I just,
you don't have a commute.
I don't have a commute as much anymore. I only do a couple days a week. Yeah. Plus, the Bomb Hole Snowboard Podcast puts out too many episodes, and I'm like trying to catch up on all these snowboard episodes. So it's like entertainment versus.
It's hard. I go through phases.
You know, I'm like, I try to mix up entertainment versus like self-growth.
Yeah, I'm on a podcast phase right now.
Happy Money concept I love, because I think that's something that people have issues with, and I think people don't know that their own brain is blocking that flow.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of work on that, because I think I had a lot of blocks.
Yeah. Example of that for me was my mom shout out my mom. Love you, Mom. She's probably not going to listen. Actually, she did listen to some recently, so she might listen to this. There was a concept, not a concept, but she used to just be like, no business talk at the dinner table, right?
Mm.
Let's not talk about money or business at the dinner table. Which then, like, I've read about this later in life, and I'm like, fuck, that like puts a weird, like a negative spin on like business and money when you're hearing that as a kid over the dinner table. Like, no, that shouldn't be something we talk about. And it would always like cause like arguments in the household or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know if I've fully like dealt with that, or at least I'm conscious of that now. And I know I try to speak about money in a positive light. And for my kids, I'm like trying to teach them about money and like as a positive. And like you say, like you're talking about the team, like blessing it and being grateful for it. And like, maybe not exactly blessing, but and just and you know, turning it back to gratitude, especially in those scenarios where you're like having to pay out money, because that's hard for me too. I get like, probably a lot of people listening too get anxious when it's like, the bills are piling up. But like, we all have a choice to turn how we view things in our brain, right?
Yeah.
You know, your brain's going to tell you things, and you get to like believe your brain and believe that your brain is you, or you get to say, that's stupid. Why did my brain, you know, I'm not going to listen to my brain right now, and I'm going to retune that thought, and I'm going to like go into a place of like gratitude for those bills instead of fear or anxiety or what else. What else comes up for you in that moment.
Totally. And like money is just like, it really is, it's energy. Like this is such a great example of this. The other day, so I have barely had any fines since I've been in Canada, like traffic infringements or whatever. And the other day I was sitting at the lights, sent a voice message at like the Park Royal intersection.
Fucking guy got me there the other day.
They were cleaning up. There was like 6 cops just fucking making bank. So I got done. It was like a $360 fine. I was like, so anyway, then I was about to buy my parking pass because I just moved to the West End or whatever. And the parking pass was going to be $400. But I go in and she's like, did you make less than 21,000? And because like the way the business works, like I do. So then she's like, oh, perfect. Well, you're on the low income bracket. So now you can, you get like a $300 and something discount. So I only had to pay like $100 for this parking pass.
Did she even ask for proof, or did she just?
Yeah, she asked me I had to show her my like T4 or whatever.
Okay.
Just logged into my CRA account and showed her. And I was like, that is just like such a perfect, like I just like money goes, money comes, and it comes in like ways that you can never imagine. And one of my favorite things that you told me like so far back on the Vintage Mastermind thing was that the pendulum can swing so quickly in either direction. And that's like so true for money, so true for everything. But like when we're like, you know, paying these really big bills and things just seem to be fucked, like you just have to remember that it's just like, it's all energy and it just flows constantly. It's constantly changing, and things can like go just as fast as they went to shit. They can go really good, and you just don't know how. Like money can come in the most crazy ways that you just don't even understand.
I love that you remembered that. Found it. But I was gonna say, it's so true. And the key I think is to like, luck happens to the bold, right? Like that theory of like, you can't, if you're gonna sit back and expect to just get lucky sitting on your couch, it's probably not gonna happen so much. You have to put yourself in a situation where luck can effectively make a difference in your life. Yeah. Right? Like, so luck favors the bold means put yourself out there, go do the thing, set yourself up in a way that success can find you. And sometimes it's dumb luck. You're dumb luck on the parking. Like that's pretty dumb luck, but you're such an open, positive person that like, I believe that kind of stuff comes to people who are like that.
Yeah, you have to. I think it's like about raising your vibration and things like that. And I think it's like an Oprah saying, she's like, when preparation meets timing or faith or something, or so essentially it's like luck, I guess. Yeah. But like you prepare, you do everything that you can to put yourself in the right situations, and then be open to it, raise your vibration, and that's how things like, you know, that's all the manifesting stuff that you talk about a lot as well.
Yeah. Totally. And I love how you say money is energy.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this a lot. and I believe it. And the concept is that, energy flows in a circle. Like when you look at like a light bulb, right?
Yeah.
It comes from an energy source. It flows through that light bulb, and there's two wires. There's in and out, right? It has to be the continual loop.
Yeah.
If you cut the loop, it stops the flow.
Yeah.
So when we think like, how does that relate to money? Well, if you hoard it, right?
Yeah.
If you hoarding the money, it stops the flow. So like you have to put it out there. And like for us in a business, it's like paying it out to our suppliers.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like coming back in through our customers, and we pay more out to suppliers and it's coming back through customers, and we buy more and it's coming back. We pay it out to our staff, which then is like, they're putting it out into their own circle, and like they're affecting our customers that are bringing it back in. It's like this, it is this flow,
Yeah.
and you can't hoard it. You can't try to stop the flow. And investing is also continuing the flow, because when you like invest money, so you could like take all your money, put it in a bank account, right?
Yeah.
And it does nothing.
Yeah.
It stops the flow.
Yeah.
If you give it to an investment, that investment does something. It grows because that company gets to then like benefit off that money, and it creates their flow. So you're benefiting from the flow of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's all, and that goes for like the energy flow is like communication.
Yeah.
If you fucking put out good energy to people, you're gonna get it back in some way.
Yeah.
I talk about this too. Like if you feel bad, if you have a shitty day and you're like, I want someone to love me, go out and love somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're like, I'm feeling shit because nobody acknowledges me, what you should do, instead of sitting there hoping someone acknowledges you, go acknowledge somebody else.
Yeah.
Because that it actually feels the same.
Yeah.
We don't think about it like that, but it does feel the same. And that same kind of goes back to like doing the opposite of what you think, because when we feel happy, we smile.
Yeah.
Right. But the act of making yourself smile will also make you happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what's like Newton's law? Like everything has an opposite and equal. Every force has like an opposite and equal force or something. Reaction. Yeah. Anyway, so you got to put it out to get it back. You can't expect to just get and take, because that's a selfish mentality. You have to put it out to get it back.
Yeah. And I think that's like when you talk about, like, I've heard you talk about this in marketing and stuff, you always have to be like, what value am I giving people? And like, even with your like business, like how am I think sometimes we get really wrapped up in like what we want to do. Like we're selling vintage because we like it. And it's like, okay, no, what service are we giving people? Like what do people want? And it's all about giving, like you have to create something of value. And it's like the more value that you can create, the more reward that you're going to get, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And everything.
They say that the more, so basically success in business, success in life is like the more people you can have a positive impact on in the world is the more successful you will be. Success is like a subjective term depending on whatever that means for you.
Yep.
But it's like Tony Robbins, like that guy like changes the lives of say millions of people, right? By all his books, by all his teachings, all these things. He's affecting change and positive impact in millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
Of course the guy's going to be fucking balling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he puts out the value.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to look at like, how are you putting out value to people? And it's tricky to bring it back to like, say like a vintage store. So like, how do you see like your vintage store giving value?
Well, for us, I think like, honestly, like it's about education for us, like 100%. We don't have the best stuff, like not even close. But like the value that we give to people is educating them, being super transparent, like about like the way we get our stuff and like the impact that it has. And you know, and also just like about business as well. Like especially in the early days when things were really hard, I was like very vocal about like how it was, like just because I think that's something that there's not enough of. And I love my gal Jo, shout out to Jo, fucking love you. She's the same, like she's just like very much like so transparent and so open. And I think, you know, in a sea of another really great book is the Blue Ocean or something, or it's pretty much about like there's an ocean of like all these vintage stores or whatever, and they're all doing like maybe a similar thing, you have to be like, okay, well, how can I stand out from that and be something different? And like, we don't have like anything, you know, it's just like a run of the mill vintage store. How can we be different? Well, like for us, it's like, and I think Joe's doing this really well as well, is educating and transparency about like,
Joe's Clutter Porch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes,
Shout out Joe.
yeah. You're like, who are you talking about? Yeah. And I think that's like the biggest thing, because there's so much misconceptions in the secondhand clothing industry. Like, people that don't shop secondhand are like, why the fuck are you selling this shit for so expensive? They just like, they don't see the value in it. And I think educating people about like the behind the scenes, the impact of the fast fashion industry, all that shit, just like helps them understand it all. And that's like, gives them like almost like, well, this is like what I feel, and this is what I kind of want to translate to my customers and the community that we've built, that is like Velvet Underground, I guess, is this like deeper feeling of like, I don't know, like a good feeling that you get from shopping. It's not just about like buying a shirt because I want to look hot at a party or something. It's like buying something and feeling like I'm contributing to something that is like making a difference. And that's what we're trying to create. And I think that's the value that we are building, at least, or trying to build in the business. It's like giving people like another level. It's not just about buying a really cool thing that you saw an influencer wear or whatever. It's about like doing that and then having like a really fucking good feeling about the impact that you're making when you're buying those products.
Yeah. I love that. Because when we, people might misconceive value as just like a monetary thing, right? And it's not. Value goes back to so many different levels, so many different parts of the business. Value in like vintage, I think it's awesome. The education piece, we're giving people that feeling and knowing that like the company is supporting a better way, consumerism, right?
Totally.
But I think there's also value in, say, like, there's value in the simple fact that you have a vintage store that someone who goes on ski vacation can go get something that they wanted instead of some bullshit that was fed to them from like some new company,
For sure.
There's value in the act of picking and sourcing all these gems, or not even gems, just cool clothes in general, all of its gems.
Yeah.
That there's huge value in that. So like everybody who's doing this work is adding value to people by taking out the work of the picking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There could be value in like the way you merchandise things to make it more appealing. There could be value in like all different areas. You just have to like look at your own business. This is for like everybody out there, and see like where do you see that you're offering the most value? Yeah. And then like dive into that more.
Yeah, and I think that's why we go so hard on the education stuff, because like I don't feel like we're like not any better than any other vintage store in terms of like the product that we're selling. Like, yeah, we're in Whistler. There's another vintage store in Whistler too, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's cool for sure, and like that's definitely adding value to the people that are in Whistler. But if you're like at a market and there's all these different vendors with great product, I don't know, like I don't think like our customer service is customer service and the education, like giving people like, we have a lot of like posters and things like that up in the store, and like my staff are all like trained, like we drill it into all of our, like when we have staff meetings, we're constantly drilling in like our mission and all of the things that we want to I guess like promote and tell people about. Because like when someone comes in and like we're all the really bad for it. Like someone comes into our store and they're like, classic thing that everybody always gets asked, like, where do you get your stock? And a lot of people get really triggered by that. They're like, oh, fuck off. Like, why are you asking that? Like, I'm not going to be able to tell you that. But we are like, okay, like we obviously can't tell them the specifics, but we're like, okay, let me tell you. And we're like, this is a big warehouse. It's like, a recycling facility, but for clothes, this is how many clothes get imported, exported. This is the impact of it. And we'll give them like a 5 to 10 minute spiel about like what the fuck is going on behind the scenes. And they walk out of the store just being like, holy fuck. And like kind of blows their mind. But in the same time, then they're just like, fuck, I just did something really cool by shopping secondhand. And then they want to go tell everybody.
And then like they see that they instantly understand the value. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this is way deeper than I thought. Because the number one stupid thing we hear people say in vintage stores is like,
the price.
well, yeah, or I could just go find this at the thrift.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, this is expensive, so I'm just gonna go find this at the thrift. And you're like, good fucking luck, you know. And then it's like, well, you know, we already went to 100 thrift stores to find that one thing, so you can try for the rest of your life, but you probably won't.
We love it when people say shit like that. Like one of my girls the other day, she heard a customer being like, how the fuck are these prices? And she was like, oh, didn't mean to eavesdrop, but, and then she just gave them like the whole rundown of like how we get our stuff and like the work that goes in behind it, and like showed them some of our posts on Instagram and things like that.
Yeah.
And then they were just like, fuck, okay. And like, they're just, you know, you change their mind right on the spot.
Yeah. And that's such a wicked opportunity.
Yeah.
That you've been able to effectively build the staff into a level where they can do that. Right.
Yeah.
So many people, this is again, like going against maybe what the intuition would have been in that moment, where somebody probably would be like, yeah, our prices are the way they are. If you don't like them, you don't have to shop here. You know, or like some dumb like that, where you're like, so again, going back to like closing an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
That you could either like go into that moment of communication with that customer in a way that closes the opportunity for them to understand what's happening and then make a sale, right?
Yeah.
Or you could go into it with a positive outlook. I'm going to educate this person and I'm going to make a sale.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a perfect example of that scenario.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful because you've completely flipped it for them.
Yeah, totally. And even if they can't afford what we're selling, like educating them and then them saying like, fuck, I went to this store the other day and they told me all this stuff, and then they're going to tell somebody that's just going to, it's like the butterfly effect. It just keeps like, that knowledge is expanding, and knowledge is power. Like people need to know. And like so many of the, you know, like things that people have like misconceptions about vintage stores, thrifting and all that kind of thing, it's just ignorance, and like not in a bad way, but like they just don't know. And it's like any industry when we're like, oh, this shouldn't be the way it is, but it's like, you don't know because you're not in that industry. So like if you break it down for them in like the nicest way possible, show them, and then they're like, oh, okay, I understand now. And like,
I'm kind of like about the price structure of vintage, right? Like that's always a big talk. Everyone's like, well, secondhand should be cheaper, you know, rare vintage can be like way more for some like quote unquote grail or whatever. But to me, I'm like in my own mind now, I think about it in a different way, because I'm like, we all sell vintage, but we also sell like just quality used clothing. Like you probably you find something that's just like mid, or like a modern, like if you find an Arc'teryx jacket that was made yesterday, you're not going to pass that up. That's fucking cool piece of, it's a valuable piece of clothing. You're going to sell it. And when I think about that stuff, I'm like, you know, I sell a ton of Patagonia here in Spanish, right? Why is the value of a perfect condition used jacket less than the value of a jacket in their store? The only difference there is perception in someone's brain.
Yeah. And the problem is like new stuff these days is produced and sold at such a like cheap price, then it's really hard for us, because consumers have been trained to buy things at a price that's not realistic, because people think that we get stuff donated. And even if we did get stuff donated, there's like labor involved with like getting a product, processing it, steaming it, putting on a rack, fucking paying overheads, paying staff, all the shit that you have to pay for. And people don't do the maths on that. So like educating them and being like, no t-shirt should ever be fucking $5. Like that is a thing that everybody needs to get the fuck out of their head. Not a fucking used t-shirt, not a new t-shirt. It's just like
100%.
Unless people are getting paid 10 cents a day, which they are.
So that value is not sustainable, and the value is also out to lunch, and it's like creating a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You know, so Patagonia will make I'm keep using Patagonia as an example. Patagonia will make a jacket. They say it's just, we'll use a simple round number of a retail for $100, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably way lower than it actually would be. If they're selling a jacket in their store for $100, they're probably manufacturing it for like 10 to 20 bucks, I would say, because these companies are working on like massive margins, right?
Yeah.
Now, we get that same Patagonia jacket we went out, we had to dig hard for it, right? We had to pay people potentially to dig for it.
Yeah.
We probably paid more than 10 to 20 bucks for it
Yeah.
in reality,
Totally.
right? So now it's like Patagonia made more margin in the beginning for making that jacket. Sure, they had development costs and they had designers and blah, blah, blah. But everyone perceives that value way higher than us going out and putting more money into finding it and more resources into finding it and then offering it up.
Yeah.
So to me, in my brain, it's worth exactly the same.
Totally.
So why would I sell that cheaper? I'm only selling it cheaper because the public's perception of it is skewed.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where education and transparency is key, and just drilling that in. It's like with marketing and stuff like that, when you're trying to teach people things, you have to just like, it's like a broken record. I think, I don't know what the exact number is, but you have to show people something like 10 times or something before it actually like gets into their mind. So like sometimes you do feel like a broken record telling people about like why it's important to shop secondhand, the impact and like the value in shopping secondhand, because it's going to take a while for it to like to change people's perception of what secondhand is and like why it's valuable. Yeah.
Totally. So don't sell too cheap. Make sure you value yourselves high enough, value the product that you're sourcing high enough, because it's there.
Yeah, but underpricing stuff is like definitely a trap, I think.
Let's talk about Joe.
Yeah.
So we mentioned him already. He's our communication coach. I'm so stoked that you're working with him. He's like changed my life in so many ways, from the way I manage, the way I communicate in general, my personal relationships. I think it's like changed and affected a lot of other people's lives too, because now I've trained and coached people, trained maybe the wrong word, coached people on like a lot of the concepts that I've learned from Joe, how they can communicate with people in their life. And I know that stuff's going to go on to like affect the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
You know? So I got nothing but good things to say about Joe. At first, when I found him, he was recommended through a family friend who also is a business consultant. But again, I think like all these terms are very interchangeable. All these things people call themselves. Yeah. A counselor, a therapist, business coach, a business consultant. There's differences probably for certain ones, but really the best ones and the most successful ones are all people that specialize in communication.
Yeah, definitely.
So at first I was like, communication coach, like I don't see how this is relevant. I don't see how this is going to like help me. I don't get it. Like, because we were looking for a business consultant.
Yeah.
Right. And turned out all we needed was a good communication coach. Again, it's not like a magic thing where it solves all your problems overnight.
He's a very well-rounded, like he has a lot of knowledge about all sorts of things, so he can give you kind of like sort of business advice as well.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Joe? How was it like for your first, you've only been with him like a couple months, I guess.
Yeah, but we've talked a lot. Like he's very generous with his time. So, yeah, he's been awesome. He's just like, it honestly just feels like you're having a chat with someone. And then when I have like an actual like direct conversation or like a hard conversation that I need to have with someone, we'll talk about it. And then he gives me a lot of ideas and like, just about how to go into the conversation, and pretty much just like, yeah, I don't know, like we'll just bounce ideas off each other for like an hour or two, and then afterwards I kind of like have a bit of a clearer understanding of like how it's going to go and like the mood and the mindset that I need to be in at the start, and like having intention about like the outcomes of a conversation is really important. And I've done so many, like obviously read like a million books about it and stuff. So I think I have like such a great foundation to work with.
Plus you're just generally a very open person who's ready to take on the concept.
Yeah.
That's something that's, I don't know if Joe has talked to you about that, but he deals with like big businesses where he's going in and dealing with like 20 people at a time. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are closed to these concepts, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, this is crazy. I don't want to do this or that or da-da-da. But like to go into a system like Joe's teaching, you have to like be very open to like a better way, a new way, try new things. Because a lot of it feels counterintuitive and uncomfortable at the start, right?
Yeah, I had that actually like a conversation with him like a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking about like a topic that was like super triggering for me. It was at the very end of our conversation too. And he's like, what you're saying is just assumptions, like stories that you're telling yourself. And I was just like getting so riled and I was really heated. And I'm just like, yeah, like, I don't think you really understand the situation. Like, and then it was like a over 2 hour conversation. I was like, hey, I need to go. Like, we can't open this can of worms right now. And then the next week, all these assumptions that I'd had, something played out that it turned out that like, yeah, they were just assumptions. And it was like pretty much the opposite of what I was telling myself was going on. And then so the next week I was like, I have an apology to make because
To Joe?
yeah, because I was like, I know I was obviously getting really triggered and like kind of pissed off with you the other week, but you were right. You sent this message out and like, yeah, I was just being like, I was overreacting or whatever about this situation. And he was like, oh, yeah. And it was such a great lesson because it was exactly like textbook what he was teaching. And he teaches a lot about like how things that we're always like, you know, when you go into something and you make a story up about what the other person is thinking or whatever it is, it's essentially just a story that you're telling yourself. You don't know anything. Everything is an assumption. Everything is a story. Like we all tell ourselves stories like 1,000,000 trillion times a day. Everything that we're telling ourselves is just a story, really.
99% of everything we think is a story.
Nothing's really factual because everybody has their own stories based on what their perception of things is, and like it could be, you know, down to like the way you were raised or what's happened in the day or like, you know, previous experiences and stuff. But like, you know, it comes down to like the like power of now kind of concept. It's like nothing that happened in the past is necessarily going to happen in the future because it just hasn't happened yet. And
yeah, it is very power of now.
Yeah. I love that. It's assumptions or how we view something is going to happen in the future or how we view so many things. In fact, is something that actually is. You know what I mean? And very little is fact. Most of everything is assumption, like you say.
yeah.
And what happens is we are using our past to create this like version of ourselves that we believe is true, right?
Yeah.
And that could be like terrible relationships. So like, I'm never going to trust a man again, or I'm never going to trust a woman again. Right. And then we let that. So again, going back to like letting that assumption of relationships in our life is either going to open a possibility to have a great relationship in the future, or it's going to close the possibility of ever having a great relationship.
Yeah.
And if we assume they're all going to suck, we've closed it off, right? And that theory of assumptions goes for everything we do, especially in business. When you're like, I got to go talk to this staff, I assume they're going to be pissed and freak out, right? That assumption doesn't create any positive outcome for you, except for you having anxiety about that thing that hasn't happened yet. And when you say power of now, like Eckhart Tolle's thing is like, there is nothing but this moment right here, right now.
Yeah.
Everything that has ever happened in history only happened in the moment that it happened.
Yeah.
So like, we can only be here now. We're always on this time plane of like worrying about things that are coming in the future.
Yeah.
And that creates anxiety. Anxiety is literally a fear of the future, a fear of assumptions of things that are going to happen in the future. Because nothing in the future is fact.
No.
The future is completely untold.
Yeah.
And then what we're doing is we're letting the timeline of our lives in the past dictate how we assume the future.
Yeah.
So you have to like look at that, and first of all, acknowledging that we do that. When you acknowledge that you're worrying about the future and it's fake, you can come back to the moment, right? And be in the now, which is like super important. So really, it's like, it's a way to like alleviate anxiety but the big thing is like learning how to deal with your past, understanding that your past is affecting you, and you can really choose to be who you want or be like your true self, as Eckhart Tolle says it in like The Power of Now. And he's like, you're not, if you're allowing your past to dictate who you are or who you believe you are not your true self. You are letting your brain, you are identifying yourself as your brain instead of identifying as your true self.
Totally. And I think like you're creating the future by projecting your past experiences onto the future, right? So like, I think that's like I work with a hypnotherapist and he talks a lot about projections, and he's like, if you can let go of projections, everything's going to change for you. And like, that's so true. And I don't think I've mastered it just yet, but definitely just even being self-aware and thinking about it is the first step. And focusing on like, if you're looking back at the past and thinking about like all the good things, like practicing gratitude, all that kind of stuff, and just be like, okay, what things are like, there's another book that's really good, Loving What Is. And it's like about like thinking about the things that are going well. Well, like, I don't know if that's 100% the concept of this book, but it's a great book. You should read it.
So that's the number 11 on the list of top 10.
Yeah, there's like a million, to be honest. But yeah, it's just like you're concentrating on like the good parts of things, practicing gratitude. And then, you know, there might be like so much evidence in your past that could say like, I'm not good with money or whatever. And then you look for all these things that are like, I'm not good with money. And then when you in your future, like, sure enough, you're going to be shit at money, and it's going to, you know, you're going to lose money or overspend or whatever. But if you can be like, okay, where in my past have I actually had like good luck with money? Have I found money on the ground? And it could be like the smallest, tiniest wins, but like think about any kind of situation that you've had that has been good, and then focus on that and don't fucking think about anything else. Just look at the good things and then just keep focusing on that. And I think that then helps you then project that shit into the future. And that's what you want to see. So that's what I've been trying to practice a lot lately.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it similar, where the stories, like you said, we all have stories, right? And that's a huge concept to understand. We make up stories mostly about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
You know, one story, an example that I had one day when I was like talking to Joe, and I'm like talking about like, I used to be like super anxious about like staff meetings, because there's a time when I have to go into like meetings with sometimes like 25 people, and I'm like leading these big meetings, right? I'm like, fuck, this is like, it's like when you go give a speech in your like high school class or whatever, and you're like, you like get all this anxiety and nerves about that, right? So my story was like, I'm not good at doing this, right? And Joe's like, dude, that's so dumb. Like, just get rid of your story, man. Like, get over it. Like, just fucking change the story. And I did. I'm like, okay, fuck yeah, I'm changing the story. I'm going and doing this. And I like changed the whole way I look at it. And I'm like really good at that now. Like, I can do that in these rooms. I'm like, because I just like let go of the story or the other situations in my past that made me believe that.
Yeah.
You know? Or I just changed the story. So just to bring this back to like an actionable thing for these people listening to this, because there's a lot of concepts going on here. This is like a bit of epic episode. So
either really epic or really boring.
Yeah, I know. We're like, I'm gonna look at the YouTube drop off. It's like everybody watched for like 5 minutes, and they're like,
no, I think people are gonna be fired on this.
Might have lost them in the P&L statements.
we should have saved that for the end. Oh fuck. Jeez. Okay, so an actionable thing to me, going back to your stories, and then how you get to choose your assumptions. Because so the first step is acknowledging, like you said, right?
Self-awareness.
When you're thinking about something in the future, all you have to do is go like, okay, that's an assumption.
Yeah.
I don't know that. And pretty much anything that you're thinking about the future is going to be an assumption, right? So an example, I have to go in a personal situation, like I'm going to go ask that girl for her number, or boy, I'm going to go talk to that boy at the bar. Yeah. Like, because that's a big one where we always are like, have anxiety about. Yeah. We assume that like, they're going to be like, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, or whatever we assume, right?
Yeah.
Acknowledge that that's an assumption of whatever the situation is, and then just make a new assumption. Be like, I'm gonna like no, I'm going to assume that that person is my soulmate, and
Yeah.
we're gonna hit it off, and it's gonna
Yeah.
be an epic night. You know what I mean? Like, you can literally just change your assumption about the thing.
Yeah.
One of them's great, one of them sucks. Which one do you want? Because we know that both of them are untrue.
Totally. And that's the same as like things like, even if like the outcome like isn't what you wanted, say for instance, like to go to the dating thing again, like if somebody doesn't text you back or whatever, and you could, this is a great one, you could assume that they hate you or there's something that you did, and then you like manifest in your mind, you make up all these fucking stories, and it makes you feel like shit. Whether it's true or not doesn't really matter, but like it's not doing you any favors by like thinking and or like what is that, like soaking in those like shitty beliefs or whatever. Whereas if you could be like, they're busy, or like they're, I don't know, got like a family crisis or some shit, make up whatever that's not about you, because like most of the shit in life isn't about you, to be honest. It's always about the other person.
Totally.
So like you have two options. Are you going to choose like an assumption that makes you feel like shit, that it's about you and there's something that you did? Or are you going to choose another option where it's like, it's about them, they've got some shit going on in their life, it's got nothing to do with you why they didn't text you back? And that makes, at least you're free from the constraints or the limiting beliefs that you could have created, and it's not going to do any favors by
That's
going.
such a good example.
Yeah.
Because like people get so bent on texts. And there's like an unwritten, you're like in your mid 30s, I'm like over 40. So we're like late to texts. You not so much as me.
Yeah.
But text communication has its own thing. So we end up assuming all these things about the way people text. Did they put caps? Did they put a full stop?
Yeah.
Did they do this? Did they do that? They mean this, they mean that. And you're like, you're just making assumptions on all this stupid shit. There's so much lost in translation of communication in text. So wicked example. And then we build this like fairy tale or like evil story in our brains about what that meant, and it's fucking us up.
Yeah, it's really holding you back. And if you really like soak in that shit, like it's gonna like, it's so detrimental to your growth and to your like, just like hinders the way you go through life. If you are just like, oh, this person hates me or whatever.
Yeah.
Why would you do that kind of stuff?
And this concept goes throughout your whole life. So a really deep thing to think about, this like the texting and like the going to ask somebody for a phone number is like pretty surface level shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets really deep is when you start to like bring it back to say like your child and your parents, and like why you have certain characteristic traits or like toxic traits, we'll say, in your life. I won't go too deep into this, but this is like a segue into like, you guys should all be like trying to like work on this stuff in your own lives, and to the level at which you want to work on it. It's all, everybody has their own fucking compass on that.
Yeah.
But like we make the stories about our childhoods, right? We make the stories about our parents did this, so I'm this way, and I do this because like I was treated not so nice when I was a kid, and da. Again, yes, there might be a fact that like somebody said something mean to you when you were a kid. That's probably a fact. But the truth is like, why? You know, have you ever taken a step back and gone like, there's the story that I built about it was wrong, and then really they were having so much of their own things happening in their life that it doesn't mean that I was a bad kid. You know, like
100%. And that's why like two people can have a very similar like upbringing where they've been, you know, had like an emotionally abusive childhood or whatever. One person is thriving and the other person's fucked. It's because it's your perception of what happened, which is the thing that traumatizes you and like destroys your like self-worth or whatever, which is like, I don't know how to get around that, but everything is about perception, really.
Yeah. I mean, it takes work. It's like not simple stuff to get around. And you get back to like Eckhart Tolle, it's like, it's like love for everything, no matter what, no matter who treated you bad. It's like, you can still have, this is what the concept in Power of Now. It's like, you can have complete love for everyone. They don't even have to know that you do, right? And it's like forgiveness of what's happened. Because if you don't forgive, you're the only victim of that situation.
Yeah.
The person who did the thing has moved on. They don't give a shit most of the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. It's not you. Who cares? But really, it's like you holding on to the not forgiving is the only, it's holding you back in your life. It's not holding them back.
Yeah.
So it's like full love, full forgiveness, full acceptance of what is and what's happened,
Yeah.
and trying to get back to like your true self. Because those things, when you haven't done that,
Yeah.
you will never be your true self.
No, definitely not. Yeah, trying to find the, like, I guess the lesson in everything, even the most fucked up situations that happen to people, happen to you in life. Everything has a lesson, and just like trying to understand that. And yeah, I like think he put a post up the other day, and it was like, it's like a story, and it's about where he's like, my horse ran away, and then they're like, oh no, that really sucks, and it's like, does it though? You don't know. Like, I love that story because it's like so true. Like, you don't know what is good, what is bad, and like if you just put a label on everything good and bad, then yeah, like I don't know, it's just very
like,
restrictive.
Yeah, accept it, and it's
And just yeah,
it is
like
it is. It is. You know, and
yeah, like you don't know what's going to happen after that. And like I always say, like there's everything happens for a reason. I think I put a reel up the other day actually about that. I really love that it's just, you know, like people change so that you can learn to let go. Good things fall apart so better things can fall together or something like that. It's this guy, I don't know even know who it is, talking about that kind of shit, and I just believe that stuff so wholeheartedly.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have an episode 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel like there's other topics I wanted to get into, and we could have keep talking
Yeah.
for hours, but we're gonna have to cut this one here.
Break up the vintage.
No, Chuck, people are gonna love this episode. If you guys like this talk, yeah, then fucking like this video.
Yeah.
Tell your friends. Okay, but we're gonna get into the ender section here.
Okay.
With my standardized questions that I ask everybody. You ready to get into it?
Yeah, I don't know. Did you send me these questions?
No.
I don't prepare. Okay.
No, they're just off the cuff. They're easy.
Okay.
Who is your GOAT, male and female, in the vintage scene?
Good question.
Greatest of all time.
Male and female. Well, female definitely Joe. I fucking love her.
Flutterport, shout out. She had an episode 2 or 3 episodes ago. Go check that one.
Yeah, I just really respect her hustle. I respect that she's like, she's worked so fucking hard to create the life that she has now, and I think that's really cool. And she's pretty young as well to do what she's doing. And I love that she's just so fucking dedicated to the mission of like sustainability and stuff. Like that's so like I have so much respect for that. And then male,
I
like
think she said you're her GOAT or something, maybe.
she maybe, I don't know.
Anyway, she shouted you out.
She's
anyway.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then male, like for sure would be you. You've been like such a mentor. I know that's kind of cliche because you're right here or whatever, but you've been such a mentor to me, like from the early days of the vintage mastermind and everything, and just like business as well. Like I think, you know, I have other mentors and stuff just in business, and I get them from like women's enterprise and all that kind of stuff. But it's like having somebody that's in the industry that's really open to sharing information as well, I think is so important because people are so fucking tight-lipped on like how to run a business and like, you know, all the like inner workings of it and stuff. People get really weird about talking about that shit, but you've always been super generous with that kind of thing.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I go back to that is also energy.
Yeah.
Like I put out, talk about value, talk about flow. It's like, I want that energy to flow and I like helping people.
Yeah.
And I've, this last couple of years, like getting to know you better has been awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Who do you put as most underrated or say rookie of the year? Somebody in vintage that you want to give a shout out to who's not fit or who's just coming up maybe? Or
I don't know. That someone that's like underrated, because like I feel like everyone that I know is getting like quite a maybe I don't know if they're underrated, but I really think like community thrift and vintage has changed a lot. But I feel like they don't have like a really like strong, like they're not really super strong on marketing and stuff, and like well, maybe they are, I don't know, they have like a lot of followers and stuff, but I think what they're doing, supporting people on the downtown east side and getting women back in the workforce and shit like that, I don't know if like enough people know about that. And like they have great stuff, it's so fucking cheap as well, and like they I think it's changed because a lot of the ownership and stuff and like management has changed a lot in the recent times. But like what they're doing is just, I think, really admirable. And I love that about them. And I don't think anybody talks about them as much. They don't seem like they're as much in, you know, in the scene. Like they're not scenos. So like they're not doing it for the clout or anything like that. But the mission behind the business is cool.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that one.
Yeah.
But it's your shout out. It's your shout out for sure.
Well, I don't know. I guess like the management stuff has changed. I'm not talking about like who's in charge of it, but just
Yeah,
like,
the concept of what they're doing. Yeah, helping people.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next question. What is your most prized piece of vintage you own, or something that you're still looking to acquire?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I have a lot of like stuff that's valuable to me, but it's not valuable to anybody else, I guess.
Pride yourself on like full vintage fits, right?
Yeah, everything.
Full second hand.
vintage. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. There's like so many like little pieces of clothing that I own. Like I really fucking love this jacket. It's nothing special, but it's like really versatile piece of clothing. These jeans, which I upcycled, I love them. I want to make more of them.
Yeah, those are rad.
But yeah, there's like a lot of little things like that I really value. But thing that I really want, I'm like on the hunt for a Smith's t-shirt. I know I could just go buy one, but they're like $1,000. But if I found one of those,
You guys have Smith shirts?
and you want to sell it for less than $1,000.
Set DM Velvet Underdog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What's the worst trend in the vintage scene currently?
Worst trend. I don't know if it's like a bad trend, like anything that I can monetize, I'm like stoked on. But like the Y2K trend, there's parts of it that I think is cool, but it's really hard for me to pick that stuff because like some of it I think is kind of ugly. And so it's like, yeah, when I'm picking like some stuff in Y2K like trends, I'm like, is this ugly? Like I kind of think it is. But it's just like, yeah, it's really hard to wrap my head around that stuff sometimes.
Okay, what about the best trend in the vintage scene?
I don't know. I'm really liking their like business core kind of vibes that are going on right now. Lots of like ties and shirts, like business shirts and stuff. Upcycling. I fucking love that everybody's upcycling stuff. Yeah, I think upcycling is like the future of the industry because as vintage gets rarer and rarer, more expensive, like upcycling is going to be like a big thing. So yeah, I don't know if that's like upcycling is I guess it's a trend in with
For sure. I mean, there's trends within upcycling too, and it's also a trend that's not going anywhere because it's like now solidified as like a sub industry of an industry, you know?
Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. Okay. We are going to end it there. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any last minute shout outs? Anybody else you want to put on here or thank? Or
I don't think so. Like my main people are just my team, my community, everybody that supports us, all of our customers, Joe, Renee. Yeah, everybody that's ever like shared, liked a post, shopped at our store, anything really. Like I'm fucking so grateful for all of it.
okay, that's it. Thanks again. I freaking love this episode. I hope you guys love this episode. We talked about everything else but vintage.
Yeah,
which
got a
is
lot of stuff.
which is a good change.
Yeah.
And I want to keep it interesting. I want to keep it new and fresh. So thanks again.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy. Sorry about the audio quality. Hope it was still a good listen for you. Hope you learned something. Thank you, Amy, for going deep with me on all these topics. Like I said, we talk about this shit all the time. Very interesting stuff to me. And if you own a business, if you manage people, it should be interesting stuff to you because too many people don't care. You should care. And it will show in your business, in your life, in your personal relationships. Quick shout out to the Bid Stitch Fleet coming up also April 1st. And that is going to be in Pasadena, California. Go check out the Bid Stitch IG page for more details on that. I am going to be in attendance April 1st, Pasadena, California, the Bid Stitch Flea. Then the following weekend, we are going to be at Inspiration, which is the Friday, Saturday before the Rose Bowl in April. So that first week of April, I got the Bid Stitch Flea April 1st. The following weekend is Inspiration, Friday, Saturday, and then the Rose Bowl on that Sunday. So it's a big one. If you're in SoCal, make sure you come out. It's a big vintage period of time. That Inspiration weekend is going to be a banger, you might say, or a hammer of a weekend. So come hang out. If you guys want to get a shout out on the show for an event, for a sale, for a store, for whatever you're doing, hit me up. I'm happy to do it. And thank you guys for tuning in. The viewership and the feedback lately on the podcast has been A+, and I'm super stoked, and I'm going to keep it going. I'm really, really focused on crushing it this year on the podcast, growing this thing. And super stoked. Thanks again. See you guys on the next one.